tell my phone it's a, so that's why I'm using it. It's your scratch pad. Yeah, okay, you know, but it's 104. I guess if that were 3 minus, you do just get. Spending. This doesn't work.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It's 6:04. Welcome to the Board of Education regular meeting in person and via Zoom. First item is introduction of board members and staff. And again, I'm sorry. Oh, we did Pledge of Allegiance wasn't on there. No. So we'll just move right to it. Yeah.
Right here.
Got it. All right, we'll begin with Pledge of Allegiance. Student Board Member Torres, please.
Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Student Board Member Tours. All right, we'll begin with introduction of board members and staff. My name is Adam Escoto and I'm president of the board, and we'll go to my right.
Nancy Altman, Vice President.
Good evening and welcome, everyone. Terry Eves Knudsen, School Board Trustee.
Hello to all of you here and on Zoom, Mary Patterson, Trustee.
Good evening and welcome, Pamela Gardner, Trustee.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. John Horner, Trustee.
Chazrin Tour, Student Board Member.
Kelly Schrieffer, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent.
Good evening, Carmen Garcia, Superintendent. I would like to address our Spanish-speaking families present and also in Zoom. Muy buenas tardes a todos nuestros papás y miembros de la comunidad de habla hispana. Tenemos traducción simultánea. Por favor, hagan clic en el icono del mundo debajo de la pantalla. Hagan clic en el icono del mundo debajo de la pantalla. Gracias por estar con nosotros.
Good evening, Pat Sanchez, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources.
Good evening, buenas tardes. Diana Jimenez, the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services.
Everybody? All right, sounds good. Thank you, everyone. And now we'll have the adoption of the agenda. Can I get a approval for tonight's agenda? Am I on?
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice President Altman. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Student Board Member.
Oops, I forgot one.
Aye.
Thank you, Student Board Member Tour. All right, next item, item E, closed session action report. Regarding this agenda, this was a public employee discipline dismissal release, and reporting out on that is in closed session. The board took action to issue a notice of release of all temporary employees for 2023-2024 school year, according to Education Code, section 44954, effective June 6, 2024, and directed the superintendent or designee to send out appropriate legal notices. The roll call vote was as follows. 6 ayes, 0 noes, 0 abstentions, and 1 absent. Next item is recognition and presentations. F1, recognition of 2024 Site Teachers of the Year and District Teacher of the Year, and honorees for the Santa Clara County Teachers Recognition Celebration. The Morgan Hill Federation of Teachers will announce the 2024 Site Teachers of the Year and the District of the Year. The board will present the Site Teachers of the Year with a certificate of recognition and District Teacher of the Year with a certificate of recognition and flowers. After the recognition, colleagues will take a photo with the honorees, right? All right, so we can have President Levis.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Jim Levis, the president of the Morgan Hill Federation of Teachers, and it is my honor to join with the board in recognizing our site and district teachers of the year. So we'll be announcing your name, and if you could please come up, President Escoto will be providing you with your certificate, and then if you could kind of scoot over into the area in front of the dais, we'll get a nice group shot when we are done. Okay. So start off with from Barrett Elementary, Ashley Stromberg. We'll get it to Ashley, don't worry. From El Toro, Tim Downer. From Los Paseos, Mary Schinkel. From Nordstrom Elementary, Rosa Mall. Congratulations. All right. From Paradise Valley, Stephanie Majors. Okay, hold on just a second. From PA Walsh, Justin Nolly. From Jackson Academy of Math and Music, Laura Rubio. From San Martin Gwin, Tatiana Valenzuela. From Britton Middle School, Kelly Parker. Martin Murphy Middle School, Frederick Espiritu. From Central High School, Nicole Ganan. From Sobrato High School, Christine Taylor. Sorry, I threw that after them. Our non-site specific is Cindy Wargaki. And our Live Oak Teacher of the Year and District Teacher of the Year, Terry Rounds.
We're going to present the flowers. We get the flowers. There we go. And we're going to take a photo. And then we also want our colleagues up here. But before we take the photo, please allow me just a few moments to say on behalf of our board and our superintendent, congratulations to every one of you. I know that each and every one of our teachers that are up here would say that this is a recognition of not only of your service, but it's also recognition of the tremendous work that you and your colleagues do each and every day. Every one of our teachers is a Teacher of the Year. We all know that. And I'm just so grateful to be able to take this moment and stand here with all of you. There's an old Mexican saying, it's actually my wife's, and it's not about me. But the saying is, and those of you who understand Spanish will recognize it right away. Dime con quién andas y te puedo decir quién eres. Tell me who you walk with, and I can tell you who you are. And all of you walk with the children of our district. And that's who you truly are. Wonderful, wonderful mentors, lighthouses, people who inspire our students. It's just an amazing, amazing work that you do. And thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts.
Mr. Bojorquez was my fourth grade ESL. We used to call it ESL back then. My fourth grade ESL teacher recently arrived to this country from Mexico. He believed in me, and because of him, I stand before you. When I see you, I see Mr. Bojorquez. I see you believing in each and every one of our students. And John Hattie is absolutely right in his research. It is all about our teachers and your belief in our students. It can literally move mountains, and in this case, can transform kids academically, at least 4 years worth of academic growth, simply because you believe in our children. So on behalf of our school district, thank you for believing in our students. Thank you for not giving up on them, and thank you for seeing their amazing potential. Thank you.
Take a photo.
One, two, three. One more. One, two, three.
Acorn of the Year award here.
All right, well, thank you very much. That was fun. And I'm going to pull us back in here and continue the meeting. We're now at the approval of minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from our regular board meeting of May 7th, 2024.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you, trustee Patterson. May I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, trustee Knutson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries. All right, now we're on to public comment. And there is, no, it's missing on here. It's the statement. Okay. Got it. All right, moving on to public comment. There's a statement that I need to read. Members of the audience may address the board on any closed session item. Closed session items. Oh, we're not talking about closed session items, on open session items, excuse me. Topics of the agenda are brought to the board's attention, may be investigated by the administration, and a report made to the board either publicly or privately at a future meeting. Comments from visitors shall not exceed 3 minutes. So we have an addition here. So our first speaker, who is on Zoom, is Andrea. Andrea, excuse me, I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly. Kuzanovich?
Yep,
I hope that's correct. Andrea, are you with us?
I'm with you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Andrea.
Okay, thank you so much.
We've got her. Is the timer set? All right, good enough. Andrea, please.
Good evening, board members and
Welcome.
members of the executive cabinet, and congratulations to the teachers of the year. My name is Andrea Kasanovich, and I've been a social studies teacher at Ann Sobrato High School for the better part of the past 2 decades. In 2021, when the governor signed Assembly Bill 101 into law for the 2025-26 school year, requiring public high school students to take an ethnic studies course, I wondered about how Morgan Hill Unified School District would go about implementing this change in graduation requirements. 2 of my colleagues, one at Sobrato and one at Live Oak, volunteered to pilot the class at the request of the district and their respective school sites. At every step of the way, they've included all stakeholders. In the process and have patiently explained the standards and curriculum to interested parties. They designed an innovative curriculum that lines up with the standards and engages students to think critically about the world that they are inheriting and actively shaping. What these colleagues did not sign up for is the questioning of their motivations, their qualifications, or their professionalism. Certainly, their students did not sign up for this type of harassment either. As an AP psychology teacher, I love hearing from my students who are also enrolled in ethnic studies about the connections that they're making between subject areas. I was delighted to learn that the ethnic studies class was working on a project in which they were asked to create a physical object highlighting the inequities within a particular system of power in the United States. Conveniently, my class was just finishing a unit on social psychology, and I saw an opportunity for ethnic studies students to showcase their models and for my students to review concepts before the exam. I asked if we could come see the projects and learn from the students. When my class arrived for the gallery walk, the presenting students were prepared and professional, but I could tell that they were flustered. Trustee Gardner, who had been invited to be a guest during the presentations, was sitting in the back of the classroom at that point. I had the opportunity to check in with several of our shared students later as I was eager to praise their work. They recounted comments made by Trustee Gardner, who made disparaging remarks about their project and the class itself. Several of them saw her take pictures of their work and send it to people using her phone. I was shocked to hear this. As a parent, I would be livid if an adult visiting a classroom as a representative of the school district questioned my child's patriotism for naming and suggesting possible solutions for systemic injustices. If a representative of the district with no formal background in the subject area were to question my child's well-researched summative project, I would have major concerns. Trustee Gardner, if you have concerns about the ethnic studies course, please leave my colleagues and our students out of it. There are no political agendas our colleagues are trying to push. They're trying to follow the law and teach our children. Please allow them to do so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Felicia Godin. Got it. Felicia, excuse me for mispronouncing your last name.
Fine, it happens
Please.
all the time. You're good.
Yeah, I think is the timer on? Are we saying? Okay, in 3 minutes.
Hello, Superintendent Garcia, Board of Trustees, and all stakeholders here and on Zoom. My name is Felicia Godin. I'm a teacher at Sobrato, and I come here today to express my support of our students at both Live Oak and Sobrato, where they have accomplished and what they have accomplished during the pilot year of ethnic studies. Their excitement is unmatched as students regularly share with me the latest reading they discussed or projects they accomplished regarding topics they had never known or heard of until this class. It is truly astonishing to see the excitement around learning and to hear students engaging in meaningful conversations about the world around them. Like all other courses our district makes available to students, this course is exemplary in encompassing the MHUSD values as listed on the district website, because ethnic studies promotes a safe and inclusive learning environment, encourages students to think critically of the world around them, actively reminds students to be present with their learning, allows for students to achieve academic success, embraces diversity through various lenses of American experiences, and works to reaffirm community between students. Most recently, students engaged in a research project where they chose a system within the United States to understand the disparities within that system, like healthcare or education. I was excited to see the students' final work and to hear how presentations went, so I attempted to go see their work at brunch. But upon my arrival, I saw a student in tears, clearly distraught by something that happened. When I later got a chance to speak to the student who I know very well, I learned that she was one of a few who ended class very distressed due to the actions of Trustee Gardner, the only trustee who was able to attend, although all were invited. Our role as educators in the sacred and valuable space of a classroom is to uphold these values as outlined by the district, as well as to encourage students to critically engage in the learning process in a respectful and meaningful way. It is our role as teachers to model these ideals of respect, compassion, a growth mindset, and curiosity for our students, and any adult who is invited into this space is also expected to do the same, especially any district representative or an elected leader. What I learned from this student was anything but that. To take and share pictures of their work without permission, to ridicule their research, and to question their love for their country is alarming behavior that in no way is an exemplary of the values established by this district. If there are parents in the audience, I want you to imagine how you'd feel if an elected representative wasted their valuable opportunity to observe the learning in the classroom and instead focused on a demeaning and discrediting the work of your child. I think it's important that I speak today to any parents, community members, young voters, or others in the audience with a stake in the future of this district. A candidate who says they want to protect your children, but then enters a child's classroom and violates their trust, space, and learning is not a person who should earn your vote. As we face looming financial challenges, the focus should not be on meddling with the learning in 2 classrooms, but on ensuring that our district, our teachers, and our students can thrive and grow with the encouragement and support. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Eden Perry. Is there someone in person? Eden Perry? All right, we'll come back. Elizabeth Armstrong, who's on Zoom. Elizabeth?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, hi, I'm a parent of a
Please.
student. Hi, I'm a parent of a student at CSMH who will be attending one of the public high schools in Morgan Hill. I sincerely hope he is never subjected to a situation that occurred on April 26th. At Sobrato High School.
Elizabeth, you're breaking up.
At Sobrato High School. Oh. Is that better? Is that better?
Elizabeth, what I'd like to do, colleagues, I'd like to restart her time. So Elizabeth, we're going to restart your time and you can begin now.
Okay. The school board mental philosophy states A safe and nurturing environment and positive. School climate are necessary for learning academic.
Elizabeth, there's still some issues with your transmission. So what I'm going to do is go to the next speaker and then we'll come back to you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, sounds good.
The next
Thank you.
speaker is MHUSD. Yeah, you're fine. Come on up.
Hi, good evening. I stand before you today to bring the conversation back to budget. It's a great concern of mine. The recent layoffs that have disproportionately affected our teachers and school site staff, who are the very backbone of our educational system, while leaving the high earners of the district largely untouched. This situation has led to a division within our district, resulting in declining morale. I recently created an MHUSD approval poll. The preliminary results from over 110 participants so far indicate that over 75% of them are dissatisfied with the academic and financial direction of our district. And they suggest a change in leadership could be a viable solution to steer our district onto a better path. It's worth noting that some employees who once held great pride in their affiliation with MHUSD now feel disheartened due to the challenges faced by our students and staff. Early in April, I shared the 22-23 financial statement audit from the district hired auditor, Aid Bailey, with the community. A concern was identified of a significant risk being the management override of controls by the auditor. In my one-on-one meeting with Dr. Garcia back in April, she suggested the language used to identify this significant risk is common language in such audit reports. However, upon reviewing the same year 22-23 financial audit report of San Jose Unified School District, also conducted by the same auditor, Aid Bailey, I found no such language or significant risk area identified. This discrepancy calls into question the accuracy of Dr. Garcia's claim that such language is common and raises a significant concern that the board should investigate this further and its implications. Furthermore, it's essential for the community to have the opportunity to review the 24-25 LCAP report prior to the hearing of June 4th. As a matter of transparency and clarity on the district priorities, we need to know when the final draft of 24-25 LCAP report will be available for review. And I apologize for my children in the background. It is in the LCAP that the dollar amounts get allocated for various actions. We need to reassess our priorities and ensure that our resources are being utilized where they are needed the most. In conclusion, let's reconvene the Budget Advisory Committee and align financial decisions with our priorities with the community input. Thank you.
Our next speaker, we're going to go back to Elizabeth Armstrong. She's not on Zoom. All right. So there is one person that we do need to go back to, and that was Eden Perry. Is Eden Perry here? Come on up, please. Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Eden Perry. I've been a teacher since '77, and I have a bilingual credential. I've been a resident in Morgan Hill for 30 years. The California Ethnic Study guidelines for the district implementation in Chapter 2 states to ensure fair, balanced investigation of facts and ideas, various points of view, accepted standards of professional conduct, rather than advocacy, personal opinions, bias, and partisanships. Okay. Board Member Gardner did her due diligence visiting the ethnic studies classroom to take a look at the program. Her duty is to make sure that the state curriculum and guidelines are being followed. She asked the teacher and students questions about their projects. She wanted to see if they learned about various points of view, which again is in the standards. Instead of being knowledgeable about different viewpoints, apparently somebody took offense. The students weren't prepared to discuss other viewpoints. Why would anybody be offended if they were asked about the subject they were learning about? Apparently, they weren't being taught various viewpoints according to the state guidelines. In my opinion, Board Member Gardner did the board and the community a great service. Now we assume that the teacher, who I have no idea who it is or what school, did not teach all the views that are necessary in this curriculum. And any non-biased teacher would welcome any questions from a board member because we're supposed to see all sides of an issue. The district continues to allow this one-sided, if the district continues to allow this one-sided presentation of controversial issues, you will set yourselves up for lawsuits like other ones happening in California. Apparently, the superintendent failed to involve parents, which is also listed in the implementation guidelines. The budget deficit of $13 million and the declining test scores, along with the failure of the superintendent to oversee the problematic ethnic studies pilot program, should give the citizens and the board a reason to put the superintendent on probation. Morgan Hill students will be harmed by her failure to balance this budget for many years to come. And also, I hope that the board takes into account our Jewish students and the prejudice that they might face in this hard time for them. Thank you.
All right, we're going to go back to Elizabeth Armstrong. Okay. She's not on. All right. I understand she's no longer on. So our next speaker is Megan Telfer. Hello, Megan.
Dr. Garcia, Board of Trustees, I'm here to ask the question, what kind of cuts are being considered at the top at the district office? I know that temp and probationary teachers are being laid off while TOSAs move back into the classroom, but I have not heard of any salary adjustments or positions eliminated at the top earners at the district office. When cuts happen at the corporate level, I've had a friend tell me that at her husband's company, the top earners all took a pay cut as a show of solidarity. However, no such actions have been considered at MHUSD. As a former second grade teacher at Paradise Valley for 11 years, I know the frustration during times of budget crisis. I started with 20 students my first year and went up as high as 32. When cuts are made at the teacher level, students are directly impacted. Their class sizes will go up. Combo classes will be made and student needs will not be met. Reading groups will only be once or twice a week. Small group intervention is very difficult. During my time teaching, I also know what it is like when you do not feel supported by the administration. Teacher morale goes down when they are the first ones to be affected without any consideration to cuts at the district level. Do not underestimate how teacher morale impacts the day-to-day interactions in a classroom and therefore student achievement. Dr. Garcia and the board, are we doing everything we can to avoid cuts that directly impact the classroom? What is going to happen when we have 2 more years of cuts to make? Our student achievement levels in reading and math are already so much lower than elsewhere in the Bay Area and across the state. We cannot afford to make cuts that directly impact our students. However, our literacy intervention programs are making great gains in helping students learn to read. We need more programs like this one, and in math as well. Please continue to put our resources towards these types of amazing intervention programs. My children are in 4th and 6th grade, and while they do not struggle with their learning, they have no opportunities to further advance their education either. There are no advanced placement courses at the middle school level, and an outside gate program no longer exists. This means that teachers bear the full responsibility of not only bringing up struggling students, but also enriching those who are at grade level or above. We should not be limiting students, and they want access to more challenging classwork. Wouldn't this help to retain children who leave our district and flock to private schools because of the lack of advanced courses and resources that are available? So I urge the board to listen to this community, and you will see that we do not want cuts that are most closely tied to our classrooms. It should be bared by all in this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Our next speaker is Kelsey Goodson. Kelsey Goodson. All right, we'll move on to. Oh, Elizabeth is back. All right, Elizabeth Armstrong. Elizabeth, can you hear us?
Hi.
Elizabeth, can you hear us?
Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Not at all. You're on.
All right. I just really quickly wanted to say that as a parent, I was about what I heard from my goddaughter, who experienced the situation at Sobrato High School in her ethnic studies class. That behavior is not in line with what I would think an elected official should be acting like. And I sincerely hope that there are efforts to rectify this behavior. I support our teachers, and I look forward to the time when my son is able to take this class. I just want to let the teachers and the students know that parents of younger generations appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Our next speaker is Rachel Schaefer. Hello.
We meet again. I don't enjoy public speaking. I don't enjoy coming out here very much and speaking about what I'm going to speak about. However, I'm sure the audience and the board has noticed there's a common demographic that has spoken about this course. I am a different voice. I am from one of the marginalized communities that is going to be instructed about. And I wanted to voice a couple of my concerns moving forward. I spoke out at the June 2nd meeting last year in 2023. And I stayed until 10 o'clock at night. Didn't get to have dinner or say goodnight to my kids because I thought it was that important since we're piloting a new curriculum. Dr. Patterson, I spent a month anxious about your patronizing comments towards me when I was done speaking. And I left greatly upset and did not speak about it for quite some time. I have 3 kids in this district. I am very involved with my school. I love my school. One of my daughter's teachers just won Teacher of the Year, which was amazing. I have raised my children to be honest above all. Honesty gives way to transparency, and transparency gives way to peace. I believe that peace is something that each one of us here tonight desires. I certainly do. I'd rather not be here. I'd rather be at home with my family. However, in light of this, I want to bring everyone's attention to a certain lack of transparency that has been concerning me over the past year. At the meeting I spoke of last year, around the agenda item for the board to approve the new ethnic studies curriculum, it was passed that night, very late, with a stipulation that 2 parents would be added to the task force. There were several parents who spoke that night. All of us spoke about our complicated experiences with race and identity. There were several pleas, oh, I better read faster. Several pleas to parents, teachers, and the board to work together to achieve a common goal, to raise critically thinking, well-rounded students. After the meeting, 2 of us were approached by one of the teachers developing the curriculum and asked to join the task force. We agreed. I did not hear anything all summer or fall. Trustee Gardner reached out because she remembered that stipulation. I told her that I had not heard from anybody. Dr. Garcia denied that that stipulation had ever been made. However, and we were told later that the footage of that meeting was deleted. However, a community member filmed that meeting. Furthermore, in private meetings, Dr. Garcia used patronizing language towards me, which I believe to be the antithesis of the goal of the Ethnic Studies program. During that June 2nd board meeting, pardon me, I'm shocked that 2 of the people who are pushing this program forward with such gusto are also able to talk down to someone whose history is being presented in these courses. The primary concern for me as a parent with students in this district has been to understand how my children's varied racial backgrounds will be portrayed, presented, and discussed. There are 2 distinct philosophies that districts can choose from.
Rachel, your time is up.
Okay.
Please
Okay.
finish your sentence.
Okay, thank you. I want to leave you with 2 points. I question the leadership qualities of our superintendent, giving her lack of consideration towards us parents who are just asking questions to protect our children. And I would secondly like to ask the district to provide all the requested lesson plans for the course for public review.
Thank you, Rachel. Next speaker is Lisa Morita. Welcome, Lisa.
I'm here with a number of others to express my extreme concern over the inappropriate behavior of trustee Pamela Gardner during her visit to the ethnic studies class at Sobrato High School, as reported by the Morgan Hill Times newspaper. I would like to address the fact that this trustee campaigned for a job that she is clearly not qualified to hold and clearly cannot handle. She does not understand the basics of appropriate human interaction, clearly does not know how to deal with students, minors, children, or teachers. When you are a school board member, I would think the ability to deal with students, minors, children, and teachers is a minimum requirement. As reported, she was rude, disrespectful to the point of making students and teachers feel uncomfortable. She asked inappropriate questions and made comments that obviously undermined the confidence and excitement of the students. Then, when confronted with her inappropriate behavior, she had the audacity to lay the blame at the feet of the superintendent and claim that she has not been trained by the superintendent on how to behave in these types of situations. Trustee Gardner is a grown woman. This is the basic human decency 101, something you should know. She should not need to be trained in this area. And if she does need to be taught how to behave in a classroom and taught that it is wrong to harass minors in school, then she is clearly not qualified to hold this position and probably should be recalled immediately. Furthermore, if this trustee does think they need to be trained on how to behave appropriately around children, they should have had the professionalism to decline the invitation and wait until somebody could train them on appropriate behavior, because at this point, it's just embarrassing, honestly. Whatever problem you seem to have with the class and the curriculum, the classroom is not an appropriate place to voice your opinions. Your opinion on this matter is actually immaterial. It's already a class, the material is being taught, students are taking it, and they will be required to take it for graduation in the 25-26 school year. I fully support the ethnic studies class, the teacher, Avery Unterreiner, and all of the teachers and students in the Morgan Hill Unified School District, as well as the superintendent, who, by the way, already has a difficult job and now has a grown adult trustee who needs basic common courtesy and behavior lessons. We need a trustee who understands how to treat people, how to interact with minors, and how to lift our students up.
We need trustees who put the students' comfort above their own. We do not need bad behavior and outdated, small-minded trustees who are somehow triggered by history. The end. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Shannon Wilkinson.
My
Shan-
name was called and I didn't hear in the lobby, Kelsey Goodson. So if there's a time, it would be great to get back on the list.
In fact, Kelsey, why don't you go now?
Sorry, Shannon, wherever you are. Thanks, Shannon. My name is Kelsey Goodson. I am a parent of 2 Morgan Hill Unified students, and I am also a community member. My husband and I lead a group of youth in this community, about 100 middle and high school students. And I work in various ways to help develop leadership as well as counseling them. Last May, at our board meeting, it went quite long. There was the ethnic studies was on the point of topic to pass, and it passed with stipulation of having a parent task force. As a person who before me spoke, that was wiped from the record, but a community member did come forward with a recording of that. So although it was not put on the notes, there was confirmation from Superintendent Garcia that it would be included. I communicated with the district officials, came in after multiple emails were never responded to. I made various phone calls and was directed that someone would contact me in time. It took approximately 9 months before Trustee Garner stepped in to make the parent task force. Rachel and I, who were hand-selected by the teachers who developed the task force, to ask us to be a part of it. So these were not people that just came out of nowhere. We were hand-selected and approached by the teachers and the staff to be a part of this parent task force. After 9 months of being ghosted by the district, we were then brought in. Some of the information for the ethnic studies curriculum is following the constructive model that was suggested to help ensure that there will be less likely of problems within the community. And this is also suggested by Governor Newsom because the liberated model has seen so many school districts in lawsuits. For example, Orange County, MVLA, Berkeley, and the entire state of Arizona are either in lawsuits or have banned ethnic studies as a result of some of the extreme curriculum being fronted. Last week, I was honored to be able to be in the classroom and go over some of the material that's being used for our students here in Morgan Hill. And although there were some amazing projects, they should have so much to be proud of. I was able to talk to some students and they are learning a lot. I want to see ethnic studies continue, but in the right way. I also saw in their own course material, classification of cults, things that are historically incorrect, lining students to pilgrims. If you have historical lineage with pilgrims, you come from a cult. And this stuff doesn't actually make any historical sense. There's a lot of documentation proving otherwise. That's just one example of material that is used that is a philosophy of the liberated model. My ask is for transparency, for families to know what their students are being taught and to work in partnership and unity with the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Shannon Wilkinson. Hello, Shannon. Take your time. Take your time.
Ethnic Studies. My name is Shannon Wilkinson. My daughter has been a student in the Ethnic Studies elective course offered at Sobrato High School this year. I wanted to show my support for this course, and my daughter helped me to write some comments. I understand there's been some bad press related to this course, and I wanted to share a more positive story. This is Sarah's senior year, and she has struggled with social anxiety throughout high school. This past year, she has really blossomed as a student, in part due to this course. This is one of those classes that she gets excited about. She comes home bubbling with information about what she learned or read. It has opened her mind to experiences of minorities and other cultures, but not in a negative way. And it has helped her to become more empathetic. The teachers have been very open about sharing what they are teaching in the course, inviting us for, I think it's every semester, they've been having us come into the classroom, sharing the curriculum, having the students speak up about their experiences. They've been very open with us. There's been no indication of an agenda to promote any political views or to sway the students toward a certain opinion. Instead, it has helped my daughter broaden her perspective and has taught her how to find unbiased information in her research and to form her own opinions. She also found that she was able to use information from her ethnic studies class to make connections in her other classes, like civics, economics, and English. Overall, we can't praise this class or these teachers enough for overcoming the obstacles necessary to make this class happen. A student recently wrote an article for Morgan Hill Life about ethnic studies, making this profound statement. It is the hard topics to talk about that are the most worth talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Charlene, I believe it's Dork. Did I pronounce that correctly, Charlene? Thank you.
Hello there. My name is Charlene Thorpe, and I'm a mom, a grandma, and have two students in the Morgan Hill School District. And first, I wanted to thank all the trustees here today for their commitment to the children in
Charlene, can you get a
Morgan
little
Hill.
closer? There we go.
Is that better?
Better.
I have two top concerns. And the first is Jeannie Scow is a former Morgan Hill Unified School District parent and part of the concerned parents of Morgan Hill. And in the May 1st, 2024, I have it here, the Morgan Hill Life, she said, I took a look at the budget. I did a comparison back to the school years 19 and 20 and 20 and 21. These budgets were balanced with the revenue. Dr. Garcia joined the district in the spring of 2021. And from that point on, you see a lack of rigor around budgeting. I'm reading this because some of the parents might not have read this in the newspaper. It goes on to say, if the district keeps pulling money out of the reserves, Scow estimates that by 27-28, the district will deplete this fund. Our contention is Dr. Garcia's contract is up in 2026, she said. If we run out of money, she can leave, but Morgan Hill is left with little to no reserves. We were completely financially healthy when she arrived. This is a self-inflicted problem. Anita Yazdi, and I think someone spoke her name already, has 3 young children, 2 attending Paradise Valley Engineering. And she also had something to say in this article. The one thing that I pulled out was the students are the customers of this district as a business. And I agree with that completely. They are the most important thing here. We must have the best teachers available to teach. They must be paid fairly, or they can't even afford to rent in this community. We do not need fluff programs and special groups in our budget. Our students are our first priority. I truly believe that. And I would like to see, considering the budget, that is taken into concern. Second thing is, I would like to thank and commend Pamela Gardner, trustee, for attending the ES classes AB 101. I hope I have that part correct. She went to the classes to have the training that was available to each trustee. It was available to all of you. I don't know which ones went, but
Your time
she
is up.
did. Okay, I just have one last part.
Uh,
I would
Quickly.
also like to thank Pamela Gardner, trustee, for visiting the ES classroom and to take an interest in seeing what the students were learning. I commend her for taking her position as a trustee very seriously. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mark Cooper. Hello, Mr. Cooper.
Hello, I'm trying to adjust the microphone. First of all, a disclaimer, I'm not representing Franklin McKinley School District, and I'm not representing the school board. Although I am a school board member for Franklin McKinley School District. I didn't write notes like you did. I saw about what was posted and I was just floored. And I want to back up just a second. I heard, and I hope it's not true, that you took off records from a video recording and did not show that. If that's true, shame on you. Really, shame on you for doing that. Whoever did that, that's not acceptable at all. If that happened in our district, that would never go. My name is Mark Cooper. I'm a 20-year teacher. I'm teaching right now San Jose Unified High School. Okay, I'm also a parent. I'm also a veteran of the United States Air Force. And as of 22, I was elected school board trustee for Franklin McKinley School District, a TK through 8, not high school. What concerned me most, and I ran three things, was primarily academic achievement. And I don't know all your statistics, but I do know Franklin McKinley for the last 9 years, we've been going down, down, down. So almost 75% of our students right now are not at grade level in math. 65% are not at grade level in English language arts. That's pathetic. 9 years continuing enrollment, the lowest it's ever. Student expenditure, spending per student is the highest it's ever been. The disconnect is unbelievable. I ran on three main ideas, and that was academic achievement, transparency, and parents' rights. These parents all have right, and I appreciate you coming in and making your voice heard. But transparency couldn't concern me because I talk to so many parents, and I still do. And I go to the classrooms, I go to events all the time, and I encourage all the board members to get out there in the community, hear what people are saying, what people are doing. Go to the classrooms like Pam Gardner did. Go and see what they're teaching, what the curriculum is. I want to learn more and more and more and more about what they're being taught. And I do know a lot about ethnic studies, so I'm not here to talk about the ethnic studies. And I agree with what was proposed was very, very liberal. I'm glad to see the governor went with a little bit more moderate approach for our state, but still, I'm not here to talk about ethnic studies, but I am here to support you. Because when you go to a classroom, I go to classroom every single week, always, always, always in the classroom, talking to our students, asking them, what are you learning, getting the feedback. We were voted to represent the public, and that's exactly what you're doing. That's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. The next speaker is Pamela Meador.
I see this investigation as a purposeful distraction from the main failings of the leadership of Carmen Garcia. Mainly, over 50% of our students are graduating below grade level. The enrollment is shrinking as parents flee our public schools for better alternatives, our ever-expanding budget woes, and zeal in which the district is ready to slash the classroom while holding on dearly to plush salaries, expensive consultants, and pet projects. I have a great idea. Let's investigate a political opponent to divert the attention rather than come to the table with constructive ideas to solve the very big and urgent problems. Great. That the investigation revolves around a concerned board member going by invitation to view a presentation, a classroom, and asking legitimate and softly probing questions seems a stretch. I would like to know who initiated the complaint and what statutes were violated. Can we have an investigation of something that we don't know what that something is? I certainly would like to know, and I find it very hard to believe that anyone could be intimidated or offended by a middle-aged, petite, and softly spoken woman. That is, unless their premise is unsupportable, or that they have been taught or that they have not been taught how to engage in a spirited and civil debate of ideas. Just because someone questions your premise, that is not an offense. That is an opportunity for you to substantiate your position. That is the time for when you can engage and further your argument. The debate has never been won by saying, you hurt my feelings. That also brings into question the scope of the curriculum being taught. The lesson should be so complete that a few simple or even probing questions can be answered, refuted, and then logically reinstate your position. If the lessons are so incomplete that the students don't have a simple grasp of their subject and cannot engage coherently with any critic, how well is it being taught? Again, being offended is not a defense in a debate of ideas. And if they aren't lessons, what are they? This investigation, I believe, is also an attempt to intimidate potential political candidates from entering into the upcoming elections, clearly demonstrating the personal, emotional, and financial costs we can inflict on you if you don't agree with me or if I don't like you. There is a significant failure in leadership here, not simply on the superintendent, but at the board level. You are tasked to work together so that our children are educated and able to compete on a global stage. The board is responsible to see that the superintendent follows the board's mandate when it comes to parent involvement and budget transparency. Let me remind you, this is not a club and this is not your money. The face of the children that you fail is the face of the future. Ridicule is a man's most potent weapon. There is no defense. It's irrational. It's immutable. It also works as a key pressure point to force the enemy into concessions. Go after people, not institutions. People hurt faster. Saul Alinsky.
Thank you. All right. That concludes public comment. We'll now move on to reports, beginning with our student board member.
It's nice to see you, Jasmine.
Thank you. You too. Sorry, I missed the last one.
Ready to go? All right.
Sobrato will be having upcoming coffee chats with administration as well as the Home and School Club, and we'll be having their yearbook distribution on May 24th. Live Oak recently had their senior awards night last night, which was a huge success. They'll also be having a band banquet on May 23rd and a dance show on May 24th. Our annual Powder Puff game will also be on Thursday, May 30th. Central High School will be having an upcoming Interact Club meeting as well as the coffee chat with the principal. Jam continues to have Spirit Wear Fridays and will be having an upcoming spring music concert. Britton will have a chat with the principal on May 24th and an 8th grade milestone ceremony on June 5th. Martin Murphy will continue coffee chats with Principal Ito and also will be having an 8th grade end of the year Great America field trip. San Martin Gwyn recently had an open house and will also have 4th grade science camp fundraiser at Sky Zone in Gilroy on May 22nd. El Toro has an upcoming Kona Ice fundraiser and Chipotle fundraiser. They will also be celebrating students at their 3rd trimester awards ceremony on June 4th. Barrett continues Pokemon Club and Get Up and Dance Spirit Days, and will also have a Star Wars Spirit Day on May 24th. PA Walsh recently concluded Frosty Friday, had a book fair as well as a Chipotle fundraiser, which I heard was a great success. Nordstrom recently had a dinner night out and will also be having an upcoming Spirit Week and Lions Den. Paradise Valley recently had their spring fling dance on May 3rd and will have their talent show on May 22nd and science fair exhibition on May 29th. And last but not least, Los Paseos will be having a field trip to the Monterey Bay Aquarium on May 28th, and 5th graders will be experiencing a spring learners fair on May 31st. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Student Board Member Tor. Now we'll have reports from superintendent and staff.
Thank you very much, President Escoto. I'm delighted to provide an update on just a few things that I've been engaging in, at least for the past 2 weeks. First, I want to take a moment to congratulate all of our classified employees. This is officially Classified School Employee Appreciation Week, and I want you to please join me in thanking all of our hardworking classified employees who I see as the backbone of our organization. They help to lay the foundation, and so they are making meaningful connections with all of our students. Oftentimes, they are the first to greet our students when they come onto campus, first to greet our students when they enter a school bus. And so on behalf of our school district, we thank each of our hardworking classified employees for all of the hard work that they do each and every day to support our kids. So congratulations. Classified School Employee Appreciation Week should be every week and every day. Last time I also shared that our incredibly hardworking student services team, and in particular the care team, received an award, a very prestigious award from Santa Clara County School Boards Association. So we went to the lovely dinner and officially congratulated our care team. They literally laid the red carpet, as you can see in the top left picture. And it was absolutely a lovely event, and it provided, at least for us, an opportunity to share this incredible program with all of the school districts in our county in Santa Clara. And there were several trustees that were in attendance. Part of leading a school district also means that I get the privilege of engaging with community members, key community members, who want to partner with us shoulder to shoulder. And really, and I think in this case, it's really, we're locking arms. And so I want to officially thank Pirate Rich Ferrado. Many of you know that he has quite a gem in our community. He has a Pirate Cove, and he has officially opened his Pirate Cove to our students for field trips. And I want to thank Jam. Jam has been engaging in multiple field trips to the Pirate Cove, and our plan is to offer this opportunity to all of our elementary students, and in particular fourth grade, because the standards are aligned with what Pirate Ferrado is trying to provide it for. And it's a local gem, and it's not just pirates and their influence in our history, but also he has local Morgan Hill history that our students are engaged in. I don't want to give it away, but I have been to several of these field trips, and I get to see, at least I try to get to see from a student's perspective, their experience visiting the Pirate Cove. I would like to take all of you if you're available. And every time I go this week, and every time I go, he has added additional things. And this is literally at no cost to the school district. He has created a foundation for our students to benefit. So thank you, Pirate Ferrado, and Ronla Cicero has been key in this partnership as well. So just a few gems. Channel 7 came out and recorded, I don't know if you saw the news segment, but they recorded Jam's most recent field trip to the Pirate Cove. Additionally, I had the privilege of attending the Green and Gold Awards. These are awards that were given to all grade levels at Live Oak, and these were department awards. And so, congratulations to our Acorns on their Green and Gold Awards. I see our partners with AAUW. I want to officially thank our AAUW partners for putting on a pretty powerful and eye-opening, tethered to facts, and I would say tethered to reality, the reality of what our teachers are currently teaching our students. And it's a funny thing about public comment. We those of us sitting on this side do not comment. We tend to not comment. Because we can't. These are items that are not agendized, and so legally we cannot comment. I do break that rule when flat out lies are stated. And so I want to assuage the community that no one tampered with anything. We are clearly transparent, and we have clearly followed the directive from the board, which was to include parent voice in the ethnic studies. And so we have had multiple parents and students attend the ethnic studies session. There were other untruths that were said, and simply I will not engage in a back and forth, but I want to assuage any sort of concern. We simply cannot comment. I comment when it is absolutely necessary. And AAUW panel was one of them. There are some rumors and some myths that we are indoctrinating our children into some, I don't know, whatever is out there. This panel centered on the state standards, which we legally must teach, which our hardworking teachers teach on an everyday basis. They teach the standards, and we had the curriculum available for all to view. And for those who are listening to us via Zoom and those of you in our community, you are more than welcome to come and inspect our curriculum. It is open, it is a public document, and we are proud of the work that our teachers deliver on an everyday basis to ensure that our students are college and career ready. That is ultimately our mission. So again, thank you AAUW for having provided that panel. If there is a need for more panels like that in the community, we are absolutely open to that and look forward to sharing with our community what's really being taught in our classrooms. In addition, we have a very powerful goal, and that's engaging with our parents. We do not provide lip service, at least during my tenure. I can reassure you and guarantee that we don't provide lip service. We have a powerful roundtable panel of formal parent leaders. These are leaders who are presidents of their home and school club, leaders on the school site council who were elected by their peers, members of English Learner Advisory Council, leaders that were elected by their peers who were part of the District English Learner Advisory Council, our Special Ed Advisory Council, and many, 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 many parents who are part of various boosters, music boosters, sports boosters. So these are formal parent leaders that are invited to engage in two-way conversations on a quarterly basis. And this last session was probably the most powerful yet. We had about 20 minutes of district updates, and the rest of the time it was parents talking to other parents, sharing best practices. And there was one parent in particular, her name is Tiffany, I won't share her last name, but she talked about SDC motivators. You see the poster? She actually came with a poster of actual evidence of informal check-ins that she has established with other parents who also have children in the special day classes. They meet informally away from campus, and they go bowling, they go for coffee, they watch movies together. And I lift that up as an example of so many amazing, great ideas that our parents are already leading. And that got the creative juices of other parents in the room. And now we're talking about how can we now create these SDC motivators throughout the district, and how can we engage the various parent groups that I talked about earlier in this joint effort. And that's just one example. And so when you bring leaders together, great ideas happen, great ideas come out. And so we also had a brainstorming session with the parents. We asked them what sort of topics they wanted us to cover, and we have a whole list of topics that we will be covering. But if I were to lift one idea, it was the power of convening parent groups in an informal setting to share best practices. And so we will certainly continue that. We also had an opportunity, ESD, Dr. Jimenez, Coordinator Alvarez. We also had, I don't know if Principal Sage is still here. Yeah, Principal Sage attended, as did Principal Diaz. We updated our dual enrollment partnership with Gavilan College. This was last week during their board meeting. We had the pleasure of sharing the great data that our students have yielded. We currently have 151 students who are taking dual enrollment classes. And if you don't know what those are community college classes that are completely free to our students. It's during the day. It is free. It provides a weighted credit. And as soon as the students complete the class, and they get an actual grade, so they get a college transcript. And so this year we had 151 students. Next year we're projected to have 830 students. And so it's that old adage of if you build it, they will come. And students are very, very interested in these dual enrollment courses. And so we were delighted to provide an update to the board. Also, Trustee Patterson and myself are part of South County Youth Task Force, and this is a South County initiative that includes both the City of Morgan Hill and the City of Gilroy, so the city managers, the chiefs of police from both cities, both superintendents from Gilroy and from Morgan Hill Unified, elected officials, and many community-based organizations. And we come together about every other month to talk about the youth in South County. And so they provided an update to the strategic plan, and that's what those slides are. And yesterday evening, we celebrated our Live Oak High School Senior Awards. Our own student board member tour received many awards. I stopped counting at 20, right? You also were very, very humble. You didn't mention that you were also a salutatorian. So congratulations. And if you did not, yes, absolutely. And every year, the faculty at Live Oak select 2 nuts of the year, acorns of the year, and Jazreen was selected as one of the acorns of the year. So congratulations. And if you did not, may I say where you're going? Berkeley.
All right, go Bears.
So congratulations, student board member tour. I am also going to be part of the City of Morgan Hill Economic Mobility Symposium. We had a planning session. It's going to be next week. Everyone is invited. I had the pleasure of working with Ron Gonzalez. If you don't know who he is, he was the former mayor of San Jose. He's going to be part of the panel. And Nell is to my right. Nell currently works in the city of South San Francisco. And essentially, this is all about how do we elevate the adults in our community in Morgan Hill so that they are economically mobile, and we are linking up our support with parents in our community and also our adult school, among others. Engaged in a student voice session, had a listening session with students at Murphy recently. And Mr. Fuchila, if you don't know him, he's a local artist. He was just given a grant by Supervisor Arenas, and he is hoping to link up with us and also Gilroy Unified to provide arts workshops to our students and to our families. And this is going to be completely free. Thank you so much, Supervisor Arenas. And then lastly, again, congratulations to our site and district teachers of the year. Thank you for your belief and your hard work so that all students thrive. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to reports from our employee groups. I understand the Morgan Hill Classified Employees Association will not be giving a report tonight. All right. So we'll now have Morgan Hill's Federation of Teachers President Jim Levis.
Thank you. Good evening, President Escoto, Board Trustees, Superintendent Garcia, staff, and guests. I am Jim Levis, the proud president of the Morgan Hill Federation of Teachers. I have a short report tonight, but I must start with first acknowledging, of course, the 23-24 MHFT Teachers of the Year. So congratulations to those of you who are still here or who have left.
Yes.
It's quite an honor.
One more time.
While MHFT members choose one member from each site and one non-site to recognize for their exemplary hard work and dedication, all MHFT members are working hard every day to provide excellent and exciting learning opportunities for their students. It is always difficult to choose, but it is important that we honor them in their work. I would like to thank the district for honoring all of the site teachers of the year at the board meeting this evening, and of course, Terry Rounds of Live Oak High School as our district teacher of the year. If you did not know, Terry teaches food science and culinary at Live Oak, and I believe is the only teacher who intentionally works with students with classes of 36 students with very sharp knives. She also happens to be one of our retirees this year, and along with our other retirees will be dearly missed. So congratulations to all the honorees. The end of the year brings many activities of celebration for MHFT members and their students, graduations, promotions, and of course, end of the year field days and field trips. Students are also busy demonstrating all that they have learned throughout the year through their AP and final exams, CASP testing, iReady work, FNP and literally testing, ESGI summary data, and of course, end of year projects and presentations. It is also a very exciting time for our high school seniors as they finally reach the end of their K-12 adventure with graduation, getting their future plans in order, touring and committing to colleges, entering the workforce, or joining the military. They have many important decisions to make, and I wish them well. Our elementary students are also celebrating at this time of the year as there have been multiple open houses with food trucks, choirs, book fairs, and student presentations. The parent-guardian turnout at these have been really nice to see. We will be continuing our contract negotiations into the summer. This is in an effort to continue to work on and improve the working conditions for all certificated employees. Since we only have 11 school days left in the year, which is kind of a little hard to believe, we are hopeful that the offer of employment for certificated staff for next year, the 24-25 school year, will be received soon. In past years, we have received this offer in early May, and members are wondering what's up. And now a little bit of the extra work from MHF team members and what's going on at our sites. And always thank you, Student Member Tour, for all of your wonderful information. Thank you very much. At Barrett, Mrs. Chappelle led 7 after-school support meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2:15 to 4:15 to give her students extra time on their year-end projects. As was mentioned, Live Oak celebrated their seniors. Of course, they got their seals of biliteracy, community service cords, academic cords at the Senior Awards Night. They also hosted the annual Green and Gold Awards. That is where staff members nominated individual students for their resilience, perseverance, and positive attitudes in the classroom. I wanted to mention that the Live Oak boys and girls lacrosse teams both made it to CCS playoffs this year, which is pretty exciting. Finally, here at Paradise Valley Engineering Academy, students will be putting on the talent show. Students have also been working on a coin drive to raise money for the magical Bridge Park here in Morgan Hill. The winner gets a trip to the park, so the kids are working really hard to raise as much as they can. I wish to close by acknowledging the hard work of the Teachers of the Year and all of the teachers and certificated staff in the district. I also want to acknowledge all the hard work of the classified and administrative staff. It takes all of us planning and working together to bring the programs to our students and families. At the end of the year, while fun and exciting, it's also very, very busy and very, very stressful. Thank you.
Thank you, President Levis. We'll now hear from Morgan Hill Educational Leaders Association President Patrick Buchser.
Good evening, everybody. Are you able to hear me? Good evening, everybody. Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you, Patrick.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. Congratulations to all the Teachers of the Year. Well deserved. All the Teachers of the Year. Well deserved. Special thank you to all of our certificated and classified. Special thank you to all of our certificated and classified recognition. We have our staff appreciation weeks, both last week. Our staff appreciation weeks, both last week and this week. Your principals are working hard on their SIPSs. Your principals are working hard on their SIPSs, next year's schedules, along with all the end of the year activities, including concerts, volunteer recognitions, promotion ceremonies, auctions, dances, and all the fun things that go at the end of the year. We're wrapping up testing with our state and local benchmarks. And getting ready for our retirement celebration. This week and next week will be our multilingual achievement ceremony. And finally, congratulations to all of our seniors as they move on to the next part of their educational careers. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Buchser. All right, next item is 1.4 board reports. Who would like to go first? Who would like to go at all? All right, Trustee Horner.
Yeah, thank you. Always wonder what I've been doing. Then I look at my calendar for the last few weeks and go, oh, that's where I've been. So Dr. Garcia mentioned the Hoffman Awards. That was amazing. You know, knowing many other trustees throughout the county, a lot of interest in our care program. What is it? How do you do it? And the whole notion of connecting our children and families to the resources they need, you know, while not what you think of with, reading, writing, and arithmetic in the old way, it's just very important. And one of the many things we're doing that's absolutely essential for many of our families. Moving on, I'll report the Morgan Hill Education Foundation held a board meeting after a recent kickoff event. I reported earlier on the kickoff event, and the main activities for the board now that there is some money is working out the precise grant process for this coming school year, and also the exact process for filling 2 more community board member seats. So that work is underway. There's nothing to report on it yet, but just wanted to let everybody know that that work is underway. I also was fortunate to have the opportunity to visit the Live Oak Ethnic Studies class. I wasn't able to make the Sobrato one. I'll just say I was very impressed with the work of the students and the work of that class and teachers, and really glad to have had a chance to experience what they've been working on. Unrelated, but kind of cool, fun little thing. The Edward Boss Prado Foundation is donating a brand new washer and dryer for the new administration building at Britain at the request of the staff there, so that when there are things in need of cleaning, which isn't something until recently I even learned that that's one of the many things staff do, quietly and diligently. They won't have to take them home. There's a nice laundry room, and there will be a nice brand new washer and dryer, donated by that foundation. I guess that will eventually come to us as an approved donation, but it hasn't happened yet. But a preview of coming attractions on that, and just one of the many little ways the community can help everybody meet the needs of our students and staff. Also, a bigger event is spent the day, like last Wednesday in Sacramento. State Senator Cortese has an annual bus trip to Sacramento on behalf of education. It started way back when he was a city council member many years ago. It's something he does to bring students, teachers, board members, advocates for public education to the Capitol. There's whole kind of all sort of a classroom under a tent set up outside on the lawn right in front of the Capitol. And then many of the state representatives come to speak to us and with us and take questions. Very, very interesting, useful, and impactful. And of course, the topic near and dear to everybody's heart right now is how best to protect as much education as funding as possible in the year ahead and the years ahead. That is a very difficult issue, as the state, both last year didn't get the money it thought it was going to get, and is under a great deal of stress. And there's a huge difference between the situation of so-called average daily attendance funded districts like ours and property tax funded districts like San Jose and Palo Alto. It's kind of a tale of two cities. But we're one of the kinds of school districts that's greatly directly impacted by what happens at the state. So the level of debate and argument going on there is intense. You're seeing things from CSBA and CTA, and everybody's weighing in. A lot of fear and upset and worry. But all I can say is that it's clear, certainly from the Bay Area contingent, everyone is looking to preserve as much education funding as possible. One of the things I learned about special education there, actually I'll bring up, later during our special education conversation. So it's a long-term kind of an effort, but it's very important. Also mention, was delighted to participate in the roundtable that Dr. Garcia reported on. I happened to sit in for the parent leader share out. There was an elementary and a secondary. I was in the elementary room and got to hear Tiffany speak about the work there. Just the work going on at the sites and around parent leadership was really, really amazing, and great to have an opportunity for them from the sites to share with each other, and then as others involved, see how we can support that. So that was really, really an excellent experience. Also, excellent experience has been volunteering a few times as an AP proctor. I did that first last year at Sobrato. Some of you are longtime proctors. I've done several of those. And it's just a delightful. It's easy proctor. I mean, you're just administering. You're not taking the test. So all my exam week nightmares I used to get as a student, they're coming back a little, but not nearly as intense as when I was one of the ones in the chair. But just really always a pleasure to spend time with the staff and the students doing something real, and just trying to be a calm and steady and helpful administrative presence while the kids are doing the hard work. I've really enjoyed doing that. And then it was just close with mentioning, Dr. Garcia mentioned visiting Pirate Ferrado, and I'm just glad, so for those of you who don't know, Rich and I spent a lot of time as two peas in a pod leading the Chamber of Commerce. He was the board chair there for many years while I was the CEO, and we worked on so many things on behalf of this community and the children and the community together. And interesting, our political affiliations are different, but our hearts are the same. And I'm glad he continues, doing everything he can from the resources he has supporting. And I haven't been out to the Pirates Cove in a while. I look forward to going again, but just really, really happy to see the report of that ongoing work because back in 2010, when we first started serving there together, our common interest was, we may be business people, but we got to figure out how to be helpful to the children of this community. That's our real job. So, really brings it 14 years later. Oh my gosh, how'd I get so old? But it's great to see that he's still very much in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Horner. Anyone else? Yes, Vice President.
Thank you. I want to have a follow-up shout out for the AAUW program. And Susan Rife, who is here, did a fantastic job moderating. Thank you for Deanna, Dr. Jimenez, Dr. Aguirre Jacinto, Director Swift, and we had Avianta Reiner, Tammy Miller, and Sunny Scott, who were teachers who presented. And it's hard for teachers to get out at night, and two of them have young kids. So it was really very generous and gracious of them to come. We had two students, Ishk and Caitlin, and then Susan moderated. I think that it was useful for me, even looking at, once again, the 7th grade sex ed curriculum, wondering what does it say about homosexuality? And in case you're wondering, it gives support information for students who are being harassed, and that's it. There's nothing explicit and at the 7th grade level. So things like that's just nice to be able to look at and reaffirm what I thought was the truth. Trustee Eves Knudsen and I got to spend 8 hours last week on a MIG training, a master's in governments through CSBA. We've become masters in superintendent evaluation and collective bargaining. So if the team wants to step aside and let me and Terry take over, for both sides, we got you covered. And I'm going to take us on a little travel to the last board meeting where I neglected to pull from consent item the personnel report. We lost a lot of good people, reported they're leaving, but I can't let Debbie Stewart leave without publicly just thanking her for her years of service in the district. We go back a long ways, and our journeys kind of paralleled our adventures in administration. Prior to that, coaching basketball. So Debbie, I wish you the best of luck moving forward, and you will be sorely missed. That's it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes. Trustee Knudsen.
Thank you. I too want to join everyone in congratulating all the teachers of the year, as well as all of our teachers in the district that work really hard. A double congratulations to Jasmine again for earning a truckload of awards at the Live Oak Award night and being an excellent student and mentor for her other students. I had a lot of fun, sort of, with the AP testing this year. I proctored 3 tests and only one of them was interrupted with a fire alarm for 35 minutes. But the kids were amazing in all of the classes and very professional and did their job. I attended Barrett's open house where their choir performed, and it's just a lovely atmosphere to go to open houses and just visit the classrooms and teachers, and everyone seems to be having a great time and they're very happy to be finishing up the year. I attended both the Sobrato Senior Exhibition and the Live Oak Senior Awards. And along with graduation, seeing all of our seniors, seeing them happy and getting the accolades for all their hard work is always awesome. I did attend last week an ethnic studies curriculum review meeting where both of the ethnic studies teachers got together. There were parents, there were students. They went over the curriculum that they taught this semester, were available to answer questions. And they did mention that that process will continue next year. So it's ongoing this year and next year. And I hope they just publish those dates out to everybody so that anybody interested can come. It's an amazing program and the students are very excited about it and doing great work. Thank you. I think that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Hearing no one else, then I will share mine. much of what I'm going to share has already been shared. And so let me just say that Trustee Knudsen and I were both at Barrett School and enjoying the music and the good work of the staff there. Also attended San Martin Gwen's open house. Not only was I able to visit classrooms, I was able to eat some of their fare. They had some wonderful tacos and papusas, and looking forward to that experience again next year. Visited Martin Murphy's orientation for incoming students. I also visited the senior projects at Sobrato, and was also at the Live Oak Senior Awards, where I got to witness, as I mentioned, I think to our superintendent, our Yazarine, when they called out her name, our, absolutely. I'm telling you, I just couldn't be any more proud, not only of your classmates in general, but you in particular. It was a real treat to be there and witness that and shake your hand. So congratulations again. And by the way, I have a number of family members that are Golden Bears. And so I'll let them know that you're going to be joining the family. All right. And also, I want to share with you that I too attended the Hoffman Awards and got to be present in the recognition of our care team. Just a fabulous recognition for the tremendous work that they've been doing. Trustee Horner and I were part of the evaluation team of other programs that were nominated. And so by design, we didn't participate in the assessment of our care team. But we certainly were privy to some of the feedback that we heard from trustees from other districts who did participate. I think there were representatives from maybe 3 or 4 other districts that were part of the review team. And the feedback we got from them, again, made us feel very proud. So again, kudos to those team members. I also want to share that AAUW is an organization, in my opinion, that is so much a part of the fabric of this community. The individuals that are members of that organization collectively have just made tremendous strides in our community and in recognizing issues, in creating opportunities for dialogue. I can't say enough. And I'm fortunate to personally know several of their members. I sit on committees and in a board and participate in some service organizations with some of them. Just a tremendous group. And boy, I'm thinking maybe I should be part of their membership efforts, because it is a dynamic organization. And I can't say enough about them and what they've done. And particularly that evening, the presentation, all of those that participated, our own vice president, who obviously had a leadership position that evening, and did a fabulous job. The students who participated, extremely articulate, eloquent, it's when you have those experiences of our students and you listen to them, and that you just reaffirms, like our own student board member, that the world's going to be okay. As long as their voices are being heard, the world is going to be okay. So in conclusion, I do want to say that I had an opportunity to visit the ethnic studies class at Live Oak, and along with several other colleagues, had an opportunity to have some one-on-one conversations with students. Very, very impressed with their projects. Extremely articulate about why they chose that project and what they learned as a result of that. And it was gratifying, not only from the standpoint of hearing that as a trustee, but also as somebody who, with my classmates over 60 years ago, advocated for those classes. And now we're seeing them to come to fruition. So it was a good day. That concludes my report. What time do we have now? I think, yes. I'm going to call for a 5-minute bio break, and then we'll resume our meeting. And we'll get started with general business when we come back.
Stretch break. 5-minute stretch. I'm like glowing.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, she's like,
We're going to resume with item K, general business. This is a public session items for board discussion. K1, conduct a public hearing regarding Morgan Hill Unified Classified Employees Association initial proposal to the Morgan Hill Unified School District regarding successor negotiations for 2024 and 2025 school year. Assistant Superintendent Sanchez will introduce and present this item.
Thank you, President Escoto, members of the board, Dr. Garcia, ladies and gentlemen. Government Code 3547 requires school districts of California to give public notice of all bargaining proposals to make these available for public viewing. This process is referred to as sunshining and provides the public the opportunity to express their views at a board meeting prior to the board's adoption of any formal proposal submitted for negotiations. The current contract with Morgan Hill Classified Employees Association ends June 30th, 2024. This will be a successor negotiations for a new 3-year contract. Attached are the union's initial proposals regarding successor negotiations. It is recommended that the board take public comment pursuant to Government Code 3547 regarding this proposal from Morgan Hill Classified Employees Association to the Morgan Hill Unified School District to open successor negotiations for the 24-25 school year.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Sanchez. I'm now going to open up public hearing. Do we have anyone wishing to make a comment? Hearing none, I'm going to close public hearing. Next item is K2, adopt proposal from Morgan Hill Classified Employee Association to open successor negotiations with Morgan Hill Unified School District for 2024 and 2025 school year. Assistant Superintendent Sanchez will introduce and present this item.
The Morgan Hill Classified Employees Association is entering into discussions with the district specific to classified unit collective bargaining agreement negotiations pursuant to Government Code 3547C. Once the public has had the opportunity to express itself regarding the union's proposal, the public school employer shall, at a meeting which is open to the public, adopt its initial proposal. This will be the negotiation of a successor agreement, a new 3-year agreement. The recommendation is that the board adopt the proposal from the Morgan Hill Classified Employees Association to the Morgan Hill Unified School District for the 24-25 school year.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Sanchez. We'll now move on to the adoption of these initial proposals. Do I have a motion?
I move we adopt the proposal from the Morgan Hill Classified Employee Association.
Thank you, Trustee Knudsen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice President. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. So did you say we're no longer?
We're still in J's, yeah.
Yeah, we're still in J's. All right, got it. Next item is to conduct public hearing regarding Morgan Hill Unified School District's initial proposal to Morgan Hill Classified Employees Association regarding successor negotiations for the 2024-2025 school year. Assistant Superintendent Sanchez will introduce and present this item.
Government Code 3547 requires school districts of California to give specific notice of all bargaining proposals to make these available for public viewing. This process is referred to as sunshining and provides the public the opportunity to express their views at a board meeting prior to the board's adoption of any formal proposal submitted for negotiations. The current contract with Morgan Hill Classified Employees Association ends June 30th, 2024. This will be a successor negotiations for a new 3-year contract. Attached are the district's initial proposals regarding successor negotiations. It is recommended that the board take public comment pursuant to Government Code 3547 regarding the proposal from Morgan Hill Unified School District to the Morgan Hill Classified Employees Association to open successor negotiations for the 24-25 school year.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Sanchez. Public hearing is now open at this time. And at the time is 7:54. I'm now calling for public comment. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing at this time. J4, adoption of proposal from Morgan Hill Unified School District to open successor negotiations, Morgan Hill Classified Employee Association for 2024-2025 school year. Assistant Superintendent Sanchez will introduce and present this item.
The district is entering into discussions with the Morgan Hill Classified Employees Association specific to the classified unit collective bargaining agreement negotiations. Pursuant to Government Code 3547C, once the public has had the opportunity to express itself regarding the district's proposal, the public school employer shall, at a meeting which is open to the public, adopt its initial proposal. This will be the negotiation of successor agreement, a new 3-year agreement. The recommendation is that the board adopt the proposal from the Morgan Hill Unified School District to the Morgan Hill Classified Employees Association for the 24-25 school year.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Sanchez. We'll now move on to the adoption of initial proposals. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Trustee Horner. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Knudsen. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We're now on J5, Special Education Service Delivery Review. Assistant Superintendent Jimenez will introduce this item, along with Director O'Brien and Special Education Team.
Good evening, trustees. Today we have for you a special education presentation with an overview of a special review regarding special education. And I'm going to turn it over. My part is really short. Turn it over to Dr. O'Brien.
All right, how about now?
You're on now.
All right, trustees, Dr. Garcia, I want to thank you for volunteering to attend this mandatory board study session. We'll be discussing inclusive practices and related special ed services. Can it work? All right, this is why I need Kristen, and I'll introduce her in a moment. We'll be presenting jointly with Empowered, who did the study for us this year, and Morgan Hill. Quick introduction, I'm Rebecca O'Brien. I'm the Director of Special Education. We have your coordinators of special education, Kristen Curtis, Kim Lubers, and Sarah Melville. I also want to recognize all of the professionals who work very hard to provide services and support for our special education students, our psychologists, our nurses, our licensed vocational nurses, teachers and mentors, paraprofessionals, OTs, speech therapists, our educationally related mental health service providers, and our board certified behavior analysts, adaptive PE, and our TPP and workability folks. I believe Kate is going to join us and introduce her team.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you this evening. My name is Kate Small, and I am an education consultant with Empower Ed School Solutions. And this here is just sort of a hierarchy of our organization. So Dr. Jenna Rufo is the founder and CEO of the company. We have a team of consultants that are supporting work across the United States. And I served as one of the lead consultants on the Morgan Hill project. I had the chance to visit your district in September, and I'm glad to be back this evening, albeit virtually. So thank you again for having me. Just a little bit about our consulting firm. We offer a variety of services, and for Morgan Hill, we did provide a comprehensive special education and service delivery review. We also offer professional development as well as instructional coaching and some additional coaching with complex. We are working with a number of organizations and we are also consulting with a number of state departments, California being one, New Mexico, and Arkansas. We also have served as educational experts for special education related matters with the United States Department of Justice and the California Department of Justice. You will hear quite a bit from me in the second half of this presentation, but I will mute until then.
So what is special ed? I'm going to give you a little bit of history. 1975 was the first federal special education law. That was the Education for All Handicap Act. And that allowed students to be placed in a less restrictive environment. Up to that point, students with disabilities didn't necessarily get any education. After this point, they were able to get an education, but usually it was in separate schools or residential schools. But some students with minor disabilities were able to be in a typical classroom setting. Then in 1977, we came up, the whole law was redesigned, and that's when you heard of IDEA, Individual Education Act. That was formulated to improve results for students and gave families the opportunity to resolve any kind of disputes and mediation. In 2004, it was reauthorized. And at that point, more students were able to get services and behavioral supports. And there was more accountability given to the school districts and more requirements for people who taught special education. Part of that history, when the Education for All Handicapped Children came out, districts and counties were required to formulate regional groups, and these became SELPAs. So we're overseen by Southeast SELPA, and that is a special education local planning area. The SELPAs provide support in trainings and helping us with any of our compliance issues. They have actual service providers that come in and help support some of our teachers who teach specialty programs and things like that, or for deaf, hard of hearing students who are included in general education. So I want to talk a little bit about the history of funding and special education. It's really important because special education law, IDEA, is a federal law and we're required to follow it. And also California has its own laws around special education that are even more restrictive than the federal law in many cases. So 1960 to 1980, it was just sort of a patchwork of students who were in residential schools or separate schools who had really severe disabilities, didn't cover the full range of disabilities. Then from 1980 to 1998, more students were covered under special education law and were served, but districts were paid a lot more money to keep kids in separate classes. So if they were in separate classes, you got more money. It was a very complicated funding formula. And then 1998, they said, okay, we're going to do pupil attendance per pupil and attendance. Before that, the county paid for mental health services and for non-public schools. After that, districts did. So you can see that the revenue that we are given from the state and from the federal government comes to about $6.7 million. Our mandates require almost 34 million. So the contribution from the general fund is 17. John Horner, Trustee Horner frequently talks about how important it is that we get all of our funding, and Trustee Escoto, all of you, I've heard all of you talk about it, that is something you always talk about at the state level. So take a moment. I want you guys to talk amongst yourselves. And I'm going to go back to this, and I want to ask you to think about how this kind of funding formula might contribute to inclusive or exclusive practices, how people who received a successful education under the system of J50, who are probably teaching now, might view students with disabilities and how they should be served based on how they grew up with it. I know.
The embarrassment, shame. Yeah. And although they really didn't articulate it,
Does anybody have any thoughts that they want to share? Trustee Altman.
I'm turned off. I was thinking that there would be an incentive to over-identify students if you could get more money for students who were in special ed.
They did put limits on how many students could be in each category.
But we would want to max them out. And so like, oh man, that kid looks like he has autism, but we have too many there, so we'll make him what used to be MR and is now kind of ID, but so there would be an incentive to max out.
Thank you.
Okay. There are multiple sites and systems that monitor special education for compliance, accuracy, and improvement. SACE is our IEP software that interfaces and shares information with ARIES and with CalPADS. CalPADS is the state of California's pupil accounting system. Disproportionality, also known as DISPRO, is the over-identification of a specific race or ethnicity group in a targeted area that the state has set. Significant disproportionality, or what they call DISPRO, is being disproportionate for 3 consecutive years in the same category. Currently, Morgan Hill is not in DISPRO or in SIGDIS for any of the California targeted areas. The last area is the compliance and improvement monitoring, which we call SIM. And it's a tiered system which places districts in a particular level based on your performance towards the state standards. So right now, our district is in a targeted level 2 because we have not met 3 or more of the state targets. When you're looking at the levels, the lowest level is a target 1. So it's target 1, target 2, target 3, and then intensive 1, intensive 2, intensive 3. So we're towards the less intensive side. So listed here are some of the pieces of special education that the CDE monitors. The ones that are highlighted in yellow are ones that our district closely monitors because we have kind of routinely moved in and out from meeting that state target. Every year, the state target increases. So we're ever trying to catch a moving target and kind of sustain that. So the yellow ones are the ones that we monitor closely to ensure that we are meeting them.
So before we talk any more about special education, just briefly want to point out that we do have multi-tiered systems of support in place. As you see there, the tier 1, 2, and 3 outlined. And as a district, we are currently working presently on upgrading those procedures and handbooks for MTSS. So what is special education? Basically, it's a range of services so that's to help our students with disabilities to make progress in school and be career and college ready. Students will become eligible under one of 13 disability categories that are specified under IDEA. I just want to point out that we're not doctors, we're not nurses, we're not making any medical diagnosis, and quite often the education eligibility might not totally tie up with some medical issues that the students got going. So education eligibility is very different. And of course, we have to abide by federal and state requirements. So eligibility. So a student may be referred by a parent or by a school, by a teacher. And assessment only takes place once a student has once we have written agreement by parents. And then we go through the assessment process. So a number of assessments are done by the school psychologist, by a teacher, and then depending on the student's suspected disability, by a number of other specialists like a speech therapist, for instance. And then we have an IEP meeting. And the assessment and current performance, we put together present levels, see where the student's at. If they're eligible, that then drives which goals we put in place, and those in turn drive the services that we're going to provide the student. And that results in the Individualized Education Program, the IEP. So this is a written plan for a student who is eligible. It has, as I said before, like present levels, where they're at, the goals, the services, accommodations, and that is not like a unilateral decision. That's developed by a team, including parents. And again, it's required under IDEA. And so then under IDEA 2, we are obliged to provide what is called a free and appropriate public education for students with disability. So that's specified under IDEA Section B and referred to as FAPE.
So the least restrictive environment is a requirement in federal and state law that students with disabilities receive their education to the maximum extent appropriate within the general education. This basically is stating that students are best served in the general education setting, with the caveat that a small percentage may need a more restrictive environment if they can't receive educational benefit, even with accommodations, modifications, and specialized services. And we'll talk about that in just a second. The state target is that 60% of our students with disabilities will be in the general education 80% or more of the time. And once again, as Kristen was saying, this is a moving target. So every year we're expected to have even more students in the least restrictive environment, which means that they're in general ed 80% or more. Okay. And so within that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the least restrictive environment and the continuum of services, looking at the least restrictive environment all the way up to the most restrictive, because in special education, all of our students have different needs and require different supports and services. And so when we're really looking at that least restrictive environment, we start with general education, looking at basic interventions, supports. And then we start receiving more services. We start providing services for students once they meet that eligibility requirement. So a student might receive, say, speech services 30 minutes a week, or resource services, 60 minutes a week. And they're pulled out of class for just a little bit of time for some specialized interventions. And then our services start becoming more intensive. So more as the disability and the student needs become more intensive, our services become more and more restrictive, or not restrictive, intensive. And so sometimes our students need services that require them to be in a specialized class. So we call those like our SDC classes. A more restrictive is even a one-to-one aid. You might think that it'd be less restrictive if they're in a general education, but this is even more restrictive because this now means an adult is following a student everywhere they go, which is inhibiting their ability to have independence with their general education peers. The next level would be serving our students outside of our district, outside of our schools. So we're providing their education in a non-public school setting or a county of education setting. And then the most restrictive environment is our home and hospital instruction or home instruction or residential placements. So what does this continuum look like within Morgan Hill? Really, it's kind of along those lines that I was telling you with the resource, speech. And then we have wonderful inclusion programs across the district where students receive more support in a general education classroom. And then we have some really specialized specialty programs. And this is really important to kind of highlight because this has actually helped us keep our, even though these students might be in a special day class, these specialty programs have helped us maintain our students within our district instead of sending them into county and non-public school systems. So we currently have what we lovingly call our Greek alphabet. We have our beta program, which is our therapeutic program for our students with significant social emotional needs. Our Delta program, which is a moderate severe program for students with very severe intellectual disabilities, language needs. Our Kappa program, which is our newest program that we opened this school year, which is specifically designed for our students with autism and is based off of the TEACH principles from North Carolina. And our Sigma, which would be kind of our typical non-categorical SDC classroom, which is really intended to kind of boost our students with really significant learning disabilities and or really significant like ADHD type environments where they just really need a small group environment, but our goal is really to push them back into general education. Within post-secondary, we have a post-secondary program as well. And this is for our students with very significant and intensive needs that go through the certificate of completion, and they receive education from 18 through 22. And then the next is when our students that we're unable to serve within this district becomes Santa Clara. We have Santa Clara students in the Santa Clara County for like deaf and hard of hearing, some other programming that we may not have access to. And then our most significant students go to, and we are unable to serve in a general education campus would be a non-public school system. And currently we don't have any students in residential programming. One.
Yep. Okay. As you all are aware, education loves its acronyms, and special education is no different. They kind of rival that. So we have an activity for you guys to participate in. So far in this presentation, there have been over 25 opportunities for acronyms to either be used or were used. So we have a sheet for you. You all are going to get 2 minutes to see how many acronyms, I know, you guys can fill out. And we have a prize from our coveted prize box for the winner. So I'm going to finish instructions. Does anybody need a writing utensil before we begin? Okay. We need one writing utensil. That's okay. Oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, no stopping yet. Now. Okay.
This is supposed to be a brain break.
Well, I know it's more fun for us.
Oh, it's your break.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
And we might need to give everybody a head start and let Nancy have a little bit of a lag time before she can turn hers over.
You're disqualified.
Okay, let's see. Let's go. All right, on mark, get set, go.
You have to do it in Latin.
We might give a
Idea
prize for
snubbed.
whoever's most creative. If you want to use that resource, absolutely.
Google, would you please finish this up?
She's going to use her time looking it up. It's okay. It's a resource. She's using her resources that are available to her. "30 seconds. All right, pencil down. Okay. No. Okay, so while you guys were finishing up, wow, you can write fast. Nice. Okay, so double check. While you guys were finishing up, I gave you the answers right in front of you. So double check real fast and see how many you got right. We're going to go on the honor system here. We have a prize box, but did you get all of them right? You have the answers in front. Double check. Does it match the answer sheet? I will accept spelling errors. All right. Did anybody have 5 or more?
5 exactly.
Okay. It's Dr. Garcia, it's right in front of your computer. There it is. It's okay. Does anybody have 10 or more? Oh, okay. Hang on. Dr. Garcia is double checking real fast.
She probably did it in English and Spanish.
Yeah. Okay, so how many did you get right? Nancy, how many did you get right? I think so. I think we can have dual winners. Thank you for participating in our activity.
The rest of us need a special day class. Go for the chocolate. That's cute.
Okay, so who receives special education in Morgan Hill? No, we will not do that. Stop trying to distract me. So this is data from a year ago. And a year ago, we had about 14.5% of our population here in Morgan Hill receiving special education services, which was higher than the rate in California from 21 to 22. So if we fast forward on the blue on the left, you can see that we currently have just over 1,100 students in special ed, which means that's about 14%. And the Californian average is hovering around 13.9 right now, so almost at parity. So breaking that down a little bit, we do have 42 students who are in out-of-district placements, so just under 4%. And then over 100 students now in our elementary speciality program, so about 10% of our total SPED population. And if we look at the secondary in speciality, that's much lower. It's just under 5%. And then 2% of students in preschool. And we currently have 3.5% of our students in the inclusion programs at elementary, which, as you know, are growing. And to look at that data slightly differently, here it is by eligibility. So by far the biggest section is the specific learning disability. And then the other three significant ones are speech and language, other health impairment, and autism. And then there's a few others that are much smaller numbers.
Can I ask a quick question on that last slide?
Absolutely.
On the elementary versus secondary, one more back, sorry. So we have 9.7% of elementary in special program, about half of that in secondary. Should I conclude from that that students as they move from elementary are less likely to need these services, or that we have an increasing population of students with these needs in elementary school that over the years, we should see that 9.7 now also show up as 9.7 in secondary?
It's two-factor. So you will likely to see this grow into our secondary. We really started creating our specialty programs about the last 3 or 4 years. And we had a huge focus in really trying to lower our MPS and county numbers. So when we first started, our MPS and county numbers were like really high. I mean, I don't have the exact numbers, but they were like 80 to 100 students. They were really high numbers about 3 or 4 years ago. And our specialty programs, we started with our preschool and our elementary. So theoretically, as these programs grow, we may see the populations grow more in our secondary. Also, though we do have a huge emphasis in our secondary programs for inclusion. So the middle school and the high school, we have only our most significant students right now in specialty programs. So it's two-factor.
So we do have students that are in the elementary programs. We're working very hard to prepare them for middle school and high school and be in more inclusive environments.
Sorry, in case you're reading body language, I'm not being resistant. My hands are cold. Sometimes people look at me doing this. What's it? No, my hands are cold. A lot of jackets on in here.
So this is our segregated data by student groups. So if we're looking at our foster youth, we currently have about 29 students that are foster youth, and out of those 29 students, 12 of them are special education, so roughly about 44%. Our homeless youth, we have about 18% of that population are currently students with disabilities. Yes.
4% of all foster youth. The top one is the whole district. So out of the whole district,
4%.
4% are foster youth. So of that 4%, 40% are also foster youth and special education. Thank you.
And then we have a high percentage of students that are economically disadvantaged. As you can see, 627 out of our TK-12 fall into that category. Our students that are English language learners or learning English as a second language, roughly around 27% of them of our students are follow within this category, sorry. And then just to kind of explain within preschool, those 25 students that are in the red, we're unable to determine because our preschool students do not take the initial LPAC. So they can't take that initial assessment until their TK. And then our achievement data. And so the next couple of slides are really going to go over our some of the CAS performance. And so I'm going to kind of get into it a little bit. So if we're looking at this, just to put this and this following data a little bit into perspective, for students with disabilities at the state level, 12% of students scored proficient or higher. So this is looking at our proficiency rate. So as you can see, our 4th and 5th grades scored above the state proficiency levels. Unfortunately, some of our other grades, we're seeing some significant concerns and areas of current concerns that we're currently looking into regarding some root cause analysis. One of the things that we looked into last year was wondering if our students have access to their accommodations and they know how to take the CASP test. You can kind of see, especially in our 3rd grade, that there have scores that are significantly lower. And then as things go on, we're wondering if they're learning how to access all that technology. And then for ELA, within the state level, it was about 16% of students scored proficient. And so we did pretty well. We did really well with our 4th and 5th and 11th grade students. And then we're still kind of seeing those dips in the middle school in that 3rd grade. So we're looking into seeing why we're having those dips in these specific grade areas. For our science scores, the state average was about 7.7%, and our averages were about 8.7. So we're pretty close or similar to the state in regards to our state standards for science. Some more achievement data.
So the next few slides are going over the CASP scores too, but this time as a district as a whole. So for all students with IEPs in ELA, these are where we are. Just to clarify where the NA is not that there aren't any students in that category, there just aren't enough for it to be statistically viable. So we do have work to do. This is ELA. This is math, and we can see that our students with IEPs who are also English learners are a particular area of concern. And then finally, the science, which is just taken in 3 of the grades. So those 3 slides were just to cover the whole district.
So what have we been doing to support our students with disabilities? So one of the things we're doing is working on our programs and resources, and these are just a snippet of what we've done this year. We have sensory rooms or sensory areas at our sites, so students have access to their sensory needs. We have a job skills lab at the post-secondary level, so students can practice their interests and get some assessment on how proficient they can be on a job. We are opening an inclusion preschool next year. We have an augmented assistive communication devices, and that's an area that most of our SDCs and even some students in general ed have access to those devices. And so if they can't effectively communicate, we have a lot of assistive technology right now. We have an assistive technology lending library. So if students need something, we can try it out with them first to see if it's going to work for them and maybe find something that we need to tweak. And then we can get those devices for them or that type of technology for them. We also have some new state standards aligned curriculum that our teachers have all been trained in that are using that. And we have Lego learning curriculum, which is, I don't know if any of you have ever seen it, but the students need to work together to create things that are robotic with Legos. And so it increases their social skills and also, science, math, and engineering, and they really enjoy it. And then we have our teach supports for some of our more significant needs in autism, which is very regimented, has a lot of visuals. So students who have difficulty with language are able to access their education in different ways. We've done a ton of professional development this year. We were lucky enough to do a lot before school started this year with a grant that we had. And so everybody involved in special ed has had some form of training this year in best practices and universal design for learning, in how to de-escalate students in general ed classes. We've trained special ed teachers, paraprofessionals, and general ed teachers in how to recognize behaviors and do more positive behavior interventions. We have legal symposiums that we regularly attend so that we can stay up on compliance. And we have done training in our social emotional curriculum, our crisis de-escalation, and those behavior supports. So our coordinators, I could read this slide, but they do a lot. So they're making referrals to get services for students to the correct students who need them. They conduct observations of students and make recommendations on high leverage practices. Then they might provide the training for those students that might need something a little bit different. They attend challenging IEPs. They meet with parents on a regular basis to address issues and concerns. Admin, they do lots of trainings for our paraprofessionals and for our teachers on a regular basis, and on-site coaching. And they really keep a super close eye on our compliance issues. And our board certified behavior analysts is another team that is centralized here in the district office, but they're rarely here. They're at school sites. They provide support for our general ed and our special ed. They do a lot with PBIS. They do functional behavior assessments, which is a very in-depth kind of assessment for students who need behavior support. They help consult on behavior intervention plans. They model best practices within the classrooms, and they do a lot of on-the-job coaching for our staff while they're in the class working with students, and they work directly with some of our students as well. Okay, so take a moment and talk about or think about some of the things that you've seen. What stands out to you? What are some of your wonderings? What are some of your questions? That was a lot of information. Yeah. One of the questions was, has there been growth in special ed over the years? And definitely there has been, especially after COVID. We had to get really careful about how we were assessing students to determine if it was COVID related or if it was a real disability. Yeah. It's hard to do. Hard to do.
We need to be using our, yeah, Trustee Horner, we should be using our microphones. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I didn't know if our audience in Zoom, whether or not they're probably boring, but yeah, we could do that.
It should be noted that we are being more careful about eligibility. And so you did see a little bit of a drop in the last year because we're paying close attention to how we're assessing students who are English learners or dualing emerging bilingual students.
Yeah.
And we've done a lot of training in that area so that we're not making students eligible who are learning a language rather than have an actual disability.
Hmm.
I wonder about the growth. I mean, because go into your mic. No, because I'm talking.
It's a private conversation you're having?
Should I wonder that into the mic?
Yes.
If you want.
I'm wondering about student data growth as opposed to the static scores. And as students are being brought back and getting exposed to hopefully a more robust curriculum that they're, even though they're not yet at comparable results with their non-disabled peers, if there's an upward trend or if it's still stagnant or what's happening.
Can I ask one question? Are you asking in terms of the performance, or can you qualify that so I can follow?
Yeah, our current iReady math and ELA data is showing that we're showing some growth this year. Mhm.
So for sure from diagnostic 1 to diagnostic 2, we're still waiting for the results of diagnostic 3.
When will those results come in? Next week. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Write them down. You can ask later. I am going to turn it over to Kate, who is going to tell you more about the study.
For this portion, I think we need to turn off our mics, right? Is that correct? Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm going to do my best. There is a little bit of a lag in terms of some feedback that I'm getting on my end on Zoom. So if I pause, just know I'm waiting to kind of get over that little hump there. So I'm going to walk you through the special education service delivery review that Empower Ed completed for the district. And I will share with you our findings as well as our recommendations. And then, of course, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have specific to the review process or any of the results. So the purpose for our partnership with Morgan Hill was really to serve as an independent outside reviewer to assess the overall programming and structure of your special education service delivery as it exists. So I will walk you through what that looked like. The methodology that we used to conduct this review is known as a convergent parallel research design. And essentially what that means is that we use both qualitative and quantitative data to come to our findings as well as our recommendations. And the reason for this is that if we were to consider just one set of data in isolation, it wouldn't be sufficient enough to answer that complex research problem that we're exploring, which is what does your current special education programming look like and what are the areas for further improvement? This is an overview of the design and all of the different components of this review that were completed. So we did begin with document and data review. That happened probably beginning in August to early September. We were able to collect some data from the district and really dive into that and to start taking a look at those things. And then listed there are the different types of documents and data that our team reviewed. We then conducted on-site classroom observations, and that happened towards the end of September. We then went into focus groups, and our focus groups were facilitated by an Empower Ed consultant, and they were comprised of teachers and administrators from Morgan Hill. We also conducted a survey that gave the opportunity for additional stakeholders to provide some feedback if they did not have the option to participate in a focus group. And all of that culminated in a comprehensive report that was produced and provided to the district. All right, so as mentioned earlier, we really started with looking at that least restrictive environment data to understand how students were accessing general education. And one of the components that we looked at here were the out-of-district placements in Morgan Hill. So one of the things that was recognized is that students with intellectual disabilities and autism were the subgroups of students that were most frequently placed out of district. And that's not uncommon comparative to other school districts and across multiple states. Also, a larger portion of students in out-of-district placements are at the high school level. So this is what the data looked like as of May of 2023. So at the high school level, there were 35 students in out-of-district placements. Middle school had 13 students and elementary 3 students. And the Office for Programs of Special Education, or OSEP, collects annual data to check in on LRE targets. And so if you could just back up to that slide for one quick second. These are some of the targets that we also looked at to include in our report. So we looked at the time that students are spending in general education. California's LRE target is at least 60% of students with disabilities are included for 80% or more of their school day. You'll notice that Morgan Hill was just slightly below that at 55.3% of students accessing general education for 80% or more of their day. We also look at restrictive placements. So the California target there is that less than 18% of students with disabilities receive their special education programs in full-time placements for most of their day. So that's looking at students who are in special education programs for 40% or more of their day. So Morgan Hill did meet that target. 15.2% of your students are in full-time programming or accessing special ed for more than 40% of their day. And then out of district placements, again, we just kind of took a brief look at that, but the state target is that less than 3.2% of students with disabilities are placed outside of the district. And original data that we collected from the district showed that Morgan Hill was at 3.81%. For students that were placed out of district. And then that number rose slightly, or that percentage rose slightly as the year continued. And that is also common because as the year progresses, there are students that emerge with more significant needs that may require placement outside of the district. So that was slightly above that state target at 4.5%. Okay, this is an overview of the snapshot observations that we completed while we were on site. This is our methodology, just so you have a better understanding of what that looked like. So over 2 days, we had 3 observers from our company who conducted these snapshot observations. We were able to get into 183 classrooms across the district, and these observations are for 3 to 5 minutes in length. So the purpose of this is to really kind of identify trends in practice across the district. And to really collect this information, we utilized a common look-for tool that included quality indicators of inclusive education, which are developed by the New Jersey Coalition for Inclusive Education. And I will also note here, Dr. O'Brien was wonderful through this process. She accompanied our consultants to these classroom visits. And while she was not filling out the look-for tool, she was able to get into the classrooms and see a lot of the same things that we saw. So after we completed those observations and compiled the data, these are the areas where there was the most evidence of implementation. So those quality indicators and where they really stood out as highlights across the district. So the first indicator was physical space is conducive to learning. So an example of that would be seating arrangements that allow for the use of varied instructional methods. And 83.3% of the 183 classrooms that we visited had full or substantial evidence of that physical space. Classroom environment is warm and welcoming. 79.9% of classrooms showed that substantial or full evidence. And again, an example of that is those kind and respectful interactions. So we definitely saw lots of positive relationships during our site visit. Another quality indicator that stands out as a highlight is procedures and routines are established. So in 60.4% of those snapshot observations, there was full or substantial evidence of this. And an example of that would be that procedures are posted and they're known to students. So we're able to see that students don't need those reminders. They kind of know how to operate within their classroom. This slide here shows some additional indicators that we noted as being high in terms of their implementation. So the lesson goal is evident. We saw this in 54.3% of classrooms. An example of that would be that students can describe the goal of the lesson. They understand what they're supposed to be learning. The lesson is student-centered. We saw that in 42.3% of classrooms. That would be students having the opportunity to co-create their learning goals. They're actively part of that learning process. And then students are actively engaged. So we saw high levels of engagement or full levels of engagement in 40.7% of classrooms. And that an indicator that we're looking for there is that learning being visible through student work is what they're producing, showing that they're learning what the teacher is presenting. And then here we have some areas where we saw the least levels of implementation. So these three categories here, or these three quality indicators, were the ones that we saw less in those 183 classrooms. So the first was multiple modalities of instruction being used. This means varying the way that information is being presented to students, so switching from a lecture style to something like station teaching. This was apparent in 28.3% of classrooms with full or substantial evidence. The next is instructional scaffolds are present and used. This was part of 25% of classrooms where there was full or substantial evidence. And some examples of this would be using graphic organizers, visual supports, calculators, things that are supporting that learning process. And then the next area was multiple access points for learning are present. So this was in 20.6% of classrooms at the full or substantial level. And an example here would be presenting information in multiple formats. So allowing students to access learning through technology or through a read aloud, something of that nature. We then have this data disaggregated by level, just so that you can see if there were any discrepancies in terms of these indicators at the elementary level, the middle school level, or the high school level. So if you kind of just read this slide here, you'll notice that there are some discrepancies. So for example, in multiple modalities of instruction being used, that was higher at the elementary level. So we saw more of that differentiated instructional approach at the elementary level. Instructional scaffolds being present, slightly lower at the high school level, and you see more of those scaffolds in place in middle school and elementary. And then multiple access points for learning being present. We saw higher evidence of this in high school and elementary school, and significantly less evidence of this in the middle school level. And through these snapshot observations, we also had the opportunity to visit co-taught classrooms. So co-taught classrooms are your spaces where a general education teacher and special education teacher are partnering together to meet the needs of all of the students. It should be noted that we had a small sample size for this. So out of those 183 classrooms, only 12 of them were classrooms where special ed and general ed teachers were working together. So that should be taken into consideration when you're considering some of what we saw. But it was definitely positive in terms of that practice. So we saw stronger evidence of full and substantial implementation of those quality indicators of inclusive classrooms in all of the co-taught classrooms, except for in one area, which was the warm and welcoming environment. But you'll notice here that was just slightly less in co-taught classrooms than it was comparative to all classrooms or those non-co-taught classrooms. We also had the opportunity to visit special education classrooms. So those are the classrooms where students are receiving their education from a special education teacher, and this would be separate from their peers that do not have disabilities. So in these classrooms, there was less evidence of full and substantial implementation of those quality indicators in all area but one, which was the use of instructional scaffolds. So instructional scaffolds were slightly higher in special education classrooms than they were in general education. The next part of our process was facilitating the focus groups, and this was really a forum for teachers, administrators, other support staff within the district to share their perceptions of the strengths in the district, as well as those areas for further improvement. So the way that these were set up is they were roughly 1 hour in length, and focus groups were broken down by categories. So we had an elementary special education teacher group, a secondary special education teacher group, an elementary general education teacher group, secondary general education teacher group, and then administrators. And the thought process there was we wanted people to be with their like colleagues so that they could really share openly their experiences and their perceptions. We indicated something as a theme if it was expressed at least 6 times. So it's important to know that we were not documenting one-off comments or observations that people were providing. We were really looking for those themes, what was common across these focus groups and the participants' experiences. So these are the perceived strengths of the district as they were shared through those focus groups. Teachers who are co-serving and co-teaching together feel that it has been effective and it has really helped to make them better teachers. There is the perception that there's a lot of positive collaboration amongst staff, a sense that all members of the district want to do what's right for kids. There is a perception that they're seeing positive results in students who are included in general education, and teachers really spoke to those positive results both academically, social, emotionally, and behaviorally. There's a perception that the district has been responsive to needs of co-teachers. So any participants who were co-serving really felt that they had received strong professional development to support them in that work. And building administrators certainly pointed out that they feel supported by central office staff. They spoke specifically to the special education department and really feeling that they're heard by those district level special education administrators. Then we have our perceived areas of needs. So this is the feedback that was provided through those focus groups around areas for further improvement. A need for a clearer vision and direction for inclusive and special education. So there's a recognition that the district wants to move forward here, but teachers are really seeking more of that clear vision. Concerns that there's not enough staff. There was certainly some mention of feeling that additional special education or support staff is needed to really include students more meaningfully. Need for more intentional scheduling to better support students with disabilities who are included in the general education classroom. That feedback came from our general education teachers who have students with disabilities in their classrooms, are really working to meet their needs, but feel that they would benefit from additional support from a special education teacher or paraprofessional. Need for additional training and need for more incentives for supporting students with diverse needs. And that really speaks to teachers feeling that they could use additional planning time or free time, if you will, during their day to really prioritize learning the needs of those students so that they can effectively support them. We then completed a survey, as mentioned. So this gave the opportunity for additional stakeholders within the district to provide their feedback if they did not get to engage in a focus group. So the methodology behind this was for participants who completed the survey to rate their perception of those same quality indicators of inclusive education that we were looking for while completing those classroom observations. We also asked them to rate their level of preparation in working with various subgroups of students. And there was an additional set of questions for co-teachers to really kind of think about their practice and what they perceived to be effective with co-teaching models. And we did have 60 staff members who responded to this survey. So when looking at those quality indicators, we noticed that respondents rated their quality indicators as more present in their own individual assessments than what was observed through classroom snapshot observations. So there was a discrepancy there in terms of what was self-reported versus what was observed. In some cases, there was more than a 50% difference in terms of what teachers self-reported versus what was observed. So of course that leads to the question of why. Why would we see discrepancies like that? And really, there's kind of two main reasons for that. The first being the 60 respondents of the survey may not be the same people who we observed when we were on site. So it may have been a different group of people providing that feedback. The other piece is really thinking about that socially acceptable responses, right? And knowing that oftentimes when people complete surveys, they complete it from a lens of what should be expected as the answer versus what they're actually reflecting upon. So those two things are taken into consideration. But it is important to really kind of share that data in comparison with those classroom observations. These next couple of slides show our structure of responses so that you have a better understanding of what those questions look like and then how respondents reported their answers. Here we looked at the level of preparation that teachers feel in terms of meeting the needs of each group within the general education classroom. So you'll notice that each color here on the graph represents a different subgroup of students. So overall, teachers reported that they feel very prepared or prepared to meet a diverse range of learners in the general education classroom. But then as you begin to look at some of those individual subgroups, we do see some discrepancies. So for example, people feel most prepared, very prepared or prepared to meet the needs of those advanced learners. That drops down by a number of percentage points when they look at their feeling of preparedness to support English language learners. And then it drops again when looking at their perception of feeling prepared to support students with disabilities. They then had the opportunity to rate their level of preparation regarding the delivery of interventions. So you will notice here that respondents kind of fell into those categories of prepared and somewhat prepared. That's where the majority of respondents selected their answer. And there's more confidence in their ability to provide math interventions as well as executive function interventions compared to those reading interventions. On this slide here, we have self-reported level of preparation for implementing classroom management strategies, supporting students with behavior challenges, and supporting students with mental health challenges. So you will notice again that overall, teachers who responded to this feel very prepared or prepared for implementing classroom management strategies. However, that drops down when looking at supporting students with behavior challenges. There's more people that are feeling somewhat prepared or not prepared at all. And then same with supporting students with mental health challenges, even more discrepancy there in that somewhat prepared or not prepared category. This was the opportunity for respondents to reflect on their perceived level of support in terms of the curriculum to meet the needs of a diverse range of learners in general education. So this pie chart here shows about 60% of respondents felt that the curriculum almost always supports or frequently supports learner variability, whereas 40% feel that it somewhat supports or not at all supports. Here we have self-reported levels of confidence for family engagement. This is really looking at engaging with families of students with disabilities, participating in the IEP process, engaging with families whose primary language differs from yours, and engaging with families whose socioeconomic status differs or whose race differs. So really giving teachers the opportunity to express their level of comfort regarding these different groups of families that they would be communicating with. We did notice that people feel most comfortable communicating and engaging with families whose race or socioeconomic status differ from theirs, and they feel less comfortable engaging with families whose primary language is different than theirs. And finally, we gave teachers the opportunity to indicate areas where they feel that they need additional professional development. So you'll notice here that 25 of the respondents feel that they need additional support with understanding how to support students with disabilities. And then the next category that had the highest response was supporting English language learners. Okay, so I will pause here for questions. I know that was quite a bit of information. Feel free to just take a moment to chat amongst yourselves, and then I'm open to answer any questions that you might have as we took a look at that first part of the review. All right, any questions?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Vice President Altman, please.
I'm curious with the classrooms that were visited, if 183 classes visited, 55 sped teachers. So was it co-taught classes included, gen ed classes, or repeat visits to the same special ed teachers' classes?
Sure, that's a great question. I should have clarified that from the start. So those 183 classrooms were special education classrooms as well as general education classrooms. We did have the opportunity to visit 12 classrooms that were co-taught. Those would be coded as general education classrooms because students are receiving those services in the general education setting. But of course, we have the special education teacher there to provide support. So those 183 classrooms were a mix of special ed and general education.
Any other questions? Trustee Gardner.
I have a few actually. Going back to the slide 53, the LRE targets. the first bullet point, can you tell me, or maybe help me understand from the teacher's perspective, how realistic is it that our district, that 60% of the special ed students will be in the general education for 80% of the day? Like, how is that? Who came up with that, and is that realistic? And yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. So we will move into the findings of our report and then our recommendations. And one of the things that we consider in terms of recommendations is really taking a look at the staffing that currently exists in the district and doing some resource mapping to determine, do you have the ability to use some of your special education staff in more inclusive ways? So I would certainly say, I mean, I am a teacher by trade. I spent many years in the classroom. It certainly takes a level of support to be able to meaningfully include students with disabilities, right? The ultimate goal is for them to be in classrooms accessing that general education, not to just be there for a social experience. So that definitely takes a level of support. And we will talk about that a bit more when we move into those recommendations.
I have a couple other questions too. Do you want me to go now, or do you want me to wait, or?
No, you are
Okay.
welcome to go now.
On the slide. Okay, thanks. Slide 55. I'm just wondering, is that 3 to 5 minute snapshot timeline, is that a standardized observation timeline? Is it a long enough timeline to form a credible observation?
Sure, another great question. So that is really the model that's used when you're completing a snapshot. And again, it's called a snapshot because it's meant to be really quick. So that would not be valid if you were going in to evaluate a teacher's practice, for example. If we were going in to see a full lesson start to finish, of course, that 3 to 5 minute mark would not give us the information that we needed. But the purpose of those observations was really to get kind of a flavor for what the instructional practice looks like across the district and how teachers are currently supporting students with disabilities so that we can make targeted and research-based recommendations. So again, that 3 to 5 minutes is really just meant to collect kind of a sampling of what does the average classroom look like and what are the things that are in place to really help those students with disabilities thrive.
Okay, so kind of like a dipstick, if you will.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Okay, and I have one other question, if I may. On
Sure.
the slide 68 and kind of tied the slide 72, I was hoping, because if you could please expand upon this, because it does concern me. I'm wondering if our teachers really feel like they're being listened to with regards to their concerns about developing the inclusion.
Sure. Let me just, I'm sorry, since the presentation is down here, I'm just going to quickly scroll on my screen to those slides to make sure I address your specific points. Okay, so that was really looking at the teachers self-reporting those quality indicators of the snapshot observations, the same things that we were looking for when we were there in person. So I think through focus groups, we certainly heard differences in terms of teachers feeling that they were supported or not supported, right? Of course, there's some variance depending on the building that they're in. I will say that we will also talk a bit about recommendations for professional development moving forward, and I can speak a little bit more to where those recommendations came from. And a lot of that was from survey information, as well as some of what was reported during that focus group conversation.
Thank you.
Sure.
Oh, losing my voice here. Sorry. Everybody's probably glad. Thank you for the questions and answers so far. They're all very helpful. I have some about the 60 staff members responding to the survey. I'm not clear who, that's a very small subset of the total. Was that special education staff? Was that all staff? Was this bus drivers and custodians? Was it district staff? Who was asked to answer and who answered? Because if it's out of our 800 to 900 employees, that's a very small sample and therefore honestly not very interesting.
Sure. Again, wonderful question. I do have those breakdowns of who those specific respondents were. So 51% of those 60 respondents were general education teachers. We had 18% who were special education teachers, 11.7% who were paraprofessionals, and then 10% who were administrators. We also had a small percentage, about roughly 10% remaining, that were considered educational specialists. So maybe a school counselor or a BCBA. So again, you point to this idea that we did have a small number of respondents. So that is certainly taken into consideration in that comprehensive report that we wrote up for the district. Dr. O'Brien, I don't know if you want to speak any more to how that survey was communicated and the amount of time that staff were given to respond to that.
I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look at how long it was left open. It was sent out several times and several reminders were provided. And then as we got closer to the close date, we sent additional reminders. And it
Sorry, so it went to all employees or all?
it actually did go to all employees.
Okay. All right, thank you. I just, and you know, on this and other topics, we often spend a lot of time slicing and dicing survey responses. But, you know, any of us that have studied statistics know one, if it's not a carefully chosen representative sample, then all the data is like interesting, but not necessarily meaningful. So we have to be really careful how we interpret self-selected small response surveys. I mean, I understand why we end up here. I know how hard it is to get answers to these things, but I just also want to just have a real word of caution of, you know, turning data into meaning. And having had a few stats classes, as many of us have, is like, this raises a lot of yellow flags. And it's not particular to this particular area. It's just hard. We see this with student surveys, you see it with political surveys, and then often you get the effect where for whatever reason, a group, did you see that survey's going around? You better make sure to answer it. You better make sure to say this, because you know, whatever somebody's angle is. So just, that's a concern I have when reading too much into survey data.
Sure, and I appreciate you saying that. And I will note in that report that was provided to the district, we do preface a lot of that. And also, our findings that we came to and the recommendations that were made were really out of a triangulation of all of these different data points. So this is just kind of a quick snapshot overview of what this research study looked like. And then, you know, that report really kind of outlines some of those limitations that you just spoke to.
And I appreciate, you know, not taking just that approach. And thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right.
Trustee Patterson had one. Maybe she went to get a drink of water. She had raised her hand earlier.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll call on her when she comes back. Would you like to continue?
Yes, absolutely. So I will just briefly run through the document review. I know this has been quite a long meeting here. So in addition to all of those other data points that we considered, the observations, the focus groups, the surveys, we also looked at a number of data points that were provided to us by the district. And I'm just going to flip here in my notes so that I can make sure I share with you the highlights. So going back to that slide there, the review of the district local control accountability plan, or the LCAP. Some strengths that were noted there were the initial work of the district to really implement an MTSS model. So we understand that that was kind of newer to being up and running, but that was certainly a strength of the district. And also the addition of school-based mental health supports. We did note that there was increased staffing to really meet the needs of students with those mental health needs. And then some areas for further improvement were the ELA and math performance of students with disabilities. That was noted as being very low compared to the category of low for all students. And then the graduation rate for students with disabilities was coded as medium versus being high for other students. We also looked at staffing as part of this review. And we had the opportunity to review special education teacher schedules as they existed for this school year. So one of the noticings here was that special educators spend the majority of their days in self-contained or separate settings. So special education teachers are serving students outside of the general education classroom. Special educators in 6 schools did not provide any support in general education. So these teachers were providing instruction in separate classrooms, whether that be an SDC classroom, a sub-separate classroom, or providing resource support outside of the general education classroom. And special education teacher schedules impose a limitation on the ability to support students inclusively. We looked at the paraprofessional usage across the district. We noted that there were 99 paraprofessionals within the district. Dr. O'Brien did point out that not all of those are special education paraprofessionals. Of that 99, 25% are assigned as one-to-ones, working with individual students, and 46% support only in special education classrooms. Paras are largely assigned to programs, and that results in some classrooms that are heavily staffed. So your classrooms that are substantially separate from the general education population typically have more of that paraprofessional support. Some conclusions that we were able to draw from looking at the staffing is that the funneling of special education teachers and paraprofessionals into separate settings leaves little room for students to be supported inclusively. So as you continue to work towards that moving target that was referenced earlier, the state's percentage and mandate for least restrictive environment, you certainly have to consider how you are assigning those special education teachers and paraprofessionals. Some special education classrooms are heavily staffed. Staff perceives a need for more staff. However, it's really our opinion and kind of our finding that prior to considering adding additional staff, it would be beneficial to consider a reallocation of existing resources. So really diving into some of that resource mapping to look at who you currently have and how they might be reassigned or rescheduled to more effectively support students. So our key findings, all of this data led us to be able to highlight some strengths of the district. So first, it was very obvious that staff is committed to supporting students with diverse needs, including students with disabilities, English language learners, and students from low socioeconomic backgrounds. So we saw this in practice in classrooms, and then we heard that feedback from those targeted focus groups as well. The district has taken positive steps towards implementing a more inclusive environment for students, as evidenced through the provision of training, addition of mental health counselors and BCBAs, and an emerging MTSS system to provide pre-referral interventions. I know you also heard some of those updates in terms of the efforts that the district has prioritized since this review was completed. It was definitely a strength that special education procedures are well-defined and compliant with applicable state and federal regulations. So we did review special education procedure manuals that would be administered to special education teachers, and there's a lot of robust guidance for them in how to develop IEPs and how to make sure that they are staying compliant with those state and federal mandates. There was certainly very high evidence of those warm and welcoming classroom environments across the district. So we could tell that there's a prioritization on student and teacher relationships. There was really kind of those warm and happy classrooms, and you could see that students really enjoyed being in those classrooms when we were able to get in and observe them. We also noted that the small group of co-taught classrooms that we did have the opportunity to visit really demonstrated some emerging positive trends. So we saw those quality indicators of inclusive education were present to a greater extent in those co-taught classrooms than in the non-co-taught classrooms. We also identified some areas for further investigation and improvement. So the first finding is that the placement of students with disabilities in separate special education classrooms has contributed to negative outcomes, including corrective action for failing to meet the state required targets for educating students with disabilities in the least restrictive environment. So that was the 60% that we were discussing as California has set as the target there. Placement in highly restrictive settings for students with intellectual disabilities and autism. Those students are more likely to be placed in out-of-district placements. A need to increase academic achievement outcomes for students with disabilities. So that really speaks to that academic data that was presented earlier. And a need to evaluate the alignment of special education staff to support students in general education. The second finding is there is a need for increased use of instructional practices that support a wide range of learners. So to really see the impact of inclusive education and to meet the needs of all of the different learning profiles that walk into a classroom, there certainly needs to be a solid understanding of teachers around learner variability, as well as universal design for learning and how to reduce barriers for all students. Additional guidance and consistency is needed for scheduling, resource allocation, and the assignment of special education staff for students. So an example of that here is really examining some of the ways that special education teachers who serve as resource teachers can collaborate with general education teachers, potentially provide some push-in support, and really consult in more meaningful ways to meet the needs of students in general education. A comprehensive approach is needed to address student behavior, engagement, and mental health challenges. Co-taught classrooms demonstrate emerging positive trends. However, the full potential of this model has likely not been realized due to scheduling constraints and the overuse of less advanced co-teaching models. So when we look at co-teaching models, there's a number of different approaches that can be utilized by two co-teachers. And when a pair is just starting out, they're more likely to use the basic models. And as they kind of maintain and build that relationship, they move into those higher models that really move students forward academically. The MTSS and intervention process requires refinement with particular attention paid to early literacy practices and reducing achievement gaps in English language arts over time. So an example here is establishing consistent procedures and clearly identifying interventions that are aligned to each tier that would be considered through the MTSS process, that tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. There is a need for clear and consistent communication regarding a vision for inclusive education in the district. So should this be a priority of the district moving forward, ensuring that that's clear to both general and special education staff, that this is the approach that will be taken in order to support students with disabilities. Okay, so finally we have the recommendations. So again, a triangulation of all of that data informed the findings, which then led us to these research-based recommendations. So the district should prioritize providing professional development on effective inclusive practices, specifically universal design for learning, student engagement strategies, and tier 1 behavioral strategies. as well as the use of accommodations and modifications. And something that should be considered here is really how you can support this work internally, using some of your special education teachers in ways that they can build the capacity of other staff members, or considering instructional coaches that are already in place. Create a district level steering committee to guide the implementation of inclusive education. So it is a recommendation that a group of stakeholders be brought together, representative of all parties that support and really participate in the ongoings of the district. So that would include family members, students, teaching staff, administrative staff, support staff, to really prioritize the steps and create a timeline for the recommendations that have been provided through this report. Engage in strategic scheduling and student grouping to create more inclusive, heterogeneous classes and adjust staffing accordingly. So it would certainly be beneficial for building principals to engage in further learning around how to inclusively schedule. So utilizing all of the different resources, human resources that are available to you to meet the needs of students in their classes. Revise the MTSS and intervention guidance to align with recommendations in this report. So there is a very extensive list of recommendations, and kind of a sampling of that so you can get a sense is here. Establishing an intervention committee to really review the interventions that are available in the district and ensure that they align with each of those tiers. Using staff in flexible ways, refining the special education referral process, and there are many more. Provide training for staff who will be engaging in collaborative teaching assignments. So again, there is a great foundation to build on in terms of that co-teaching practice. So ensuring that time is dedicated to enhancing the skills of those teachers, and then really supporting new pairs that may emerge based on the needs of your students and your scheduling, so that they can effectively work together to meet the needs of those students with disabilities in the general education classroom. Next steps. In this report, we did provide a timeline recommending priorities in terms of these recommendations and when they should be completed. This timeline really serves as a guide. So one of the main roles of that steering committee, if it's established, would be to review the timeline that we recommended and really personalize it to the district in terms of what's attainable and what's practical for you within this next school year, and then of course in the school years moving forward. And that brings us to the end here. I apologize for being quite long-winded, but I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, questions? Yes, Trustee Knudsen.
Thank you for all your work on this program and for all of these results. I'm wondering if when you, at the end of this survey and evaluation, if there was anything about the district that totally surprised you, or do you think that the results are fairly common for districts of our size and our place in California?
Sure. I think you certainly mirror a lot of what's happening across the country in terms of looking to shift to really be able to provide special education supports more inclusively. So I will say that something that surprised me is that I think you really do have solid staffing in place. Again, I would emphasize the reallocation of that staff and really kind of reviewing each of those individual roles. I also think you're at a point where you may need to consider whether your self-contained special education classrooms are serving students in the ways that you would expect, right? So when we look at that academic achievement data, if students with disabilities are not receiving access to general education because they're receiving support in a more restrictive setting, we typically don't see them make that progress towards the grade level standards that we want them to and that we need them to. So by really examining those specialized programs and making some decisions about whether they're serving students could help you to be able to reassign some of your current staff.
Thank you.
Sure.
Vice President Altman.
I'm wondering if you didn't just look at standardized tests, but how many students actually met their IEP goals?
So we do not have data on students that did meet their IEP goals included in this report. I don't know if Dr. O'Brien has data. I'm sure it's not right at her fingertips that she might be able to provide there. Really, what we were looking to do through this report is really kind of analyze the current access that students have to general education, and then to make recommendations to ensure that you can get closer to meeting that 60%, which of course could change moving forward. That's a great question.
Trustee Patterson.
For Dr. O'Brien and Ms. Curtis and Ms. Lubers, Ms. Melville, I was just wondering what you find in these findings, what strikes you, and how much of these recommendations are doable, just kind of from a heart and gut perspective.
Hey, you put us on the spot with that one. I think the question of how we reallocate staffing is much more complex than it might seem. So I think that has to be considered carefully, and how the students that are currently receiving those supports could be included in a more meaningful way. One of the things that's pointed out, for example, is resource level students and their paras providing more support in general ed. I think that's something that can and should be looked at more closely. And then there's the disparity between perception and some of the things that are actually being seen in classrooms. So that, I think we have to continue to work on those MTSS systems of support, and then be thinking about how we are supporting students before they even get into the special education system. Because if universal design for learning is something that everyone's using and understands, and the behavior and the social emotional supports are available and present, then the number of students going into special education will decrease naturally. You guys have something you want to add?
No.
Trustee Horner.
Thank you. And a couple questions. The first one is, I don't recall seeing an analysis, in this breadth and depth by a third party in the years I've been here. Was I not paying attention, or is this a new practice for us? This is new. So it seems useful to, get an outside expert to really come look at things, left to right, top to bottom, forward and back. So I'm glad it's not a failure of my memory, and that this is something new that you've taken on and done. I'm sure it's not always easy having quote outsiders come in and look over your shoulder and say, oh, that's good, that's not so good, that's good, that's not so good. That can be a little stressful. So I appreciate given that, that folks have taken that on. And then really inclusion, keeps coming up as a topic here. And it reminds me of one of the surprising conversations I had, literally at the back of the room in Sacramento, with somebody who's been deeply involved in education for decades and far more expert than I can ever imagine becoming. But as was mentioned earlier, I've been on this like, wow, special ed is absolutely necessary and very expensive. And the federal and state governments keep passing laws and expectations, but not paying for it. Right? That's kind of where we are. And this person said, well, you know, here in the state capitol, and this wasn't a government employee, but, you know, we're not going to get more funding from the state dedicated to special ed until the California Teachers Association gets behind inclusion. You know, I'm not going to name names, but this was kind of a shocking political observation to me. I haven't seen, our teachers are not affiliated with CTA here in Morgan Hill, but I'm just wondering, is there, you know, political union pushback to the very concept of inclusion? Is that an impediment in general, statewide or nationwide? And is that affecting us? And anyway, I just thought, well, that was an interesting thing to hear. And knowing this was on our agenda, that I will ask people that know a lot more about it than I do to help us understand the realities around that. Or can we just go back to Sacramento and say, no, we got that nailed. The unions are all behind this. Give us the money. Anyhow, that was a surprising thing to hear. So I want to take this opportunity to ask people that really understand it more than I do. How should I interpret that? Was this person wrong? To anyone?
So I
Nobody
will,
wants to.
I will certainly say that, you know, as board members, I'm sure you know, many topics in education have been politicized recently. And, you know, as part of my work as a consultant, right, is not only supporting districts and state departments, but also really advocating for greater funding at the state level and then at the federal level as well. So IDEA has never been fully funded. And that's certainly something that does need to change to be able to move towards more inclusive opportunities. And I would also say that, you know, mindset work is a huge piece of successful inclusion of students with disabilities and really supporting all learners. So really being able to enhance the mindset of educators and support them as they grow their skill set to be able to meet the ever-changing needs of the students that they're seeing in their classrooms.
Diplomatic answer. But you know, the federal government, and you know, it was just back in DC along with Dr. Rosales Montez and the others, you know, beating on the federal government about their 40%. But that reminds me, at least in our context, the other 60% is the state, since we don't have any local control over our funding. We have local accountability for all kinds of things, but we don't get to decide how much money we have to do it with. They tell us. So I don't know if anyone else has insight, or maybe you want to have a cup of tea with me later and we'll talk about it more.
I think it's just important to note that there's a vast body of research and years of longitudinal data that show that inclusion is better for all students, not just special ed students, but general ed students. And I won't even speak to, you know, I don't know about the union and I won't speak to it, but what I am seeing a trend in is newer teachers that are coming out of programs much more prepared to work with with the universal design for learning process and with all students. And I will kind of go back to my slide about funding in California and some of maybe the perception work that Kate talked about. Like, if you grew up in a system where kids were separate and it worked for you really well, you may have that mindset, and it may take work to see that the research doesn't support that.
Are you experiencing pushback here against those initiatives, or not so much inclusion and other?
I would never say that.
Okay, a cup of tea then.
We do have, I think people are very interested in serving all students.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
And we have a local sort of focus group of sorts. We have some early adopters, so Nordstrom and El Toro, for example, and we're gathering some pretty phenomenal quantitative data on those classes that are inclusion classes. And to echo what Dr. O'Brien said, it's sort of like that tide that lifts all boats. It's the gen ed and the kids with disabilities that are growing exponentially. And so we believe in this. And we need to be thoughtful in terms of a rollout to other sites, et cetera. And this review does provide a roadmap of sorts.
Vice President Altman.
Thank you. One of my huge concerns in special ed is my perception of rapid teacher turnover. Would you say that's a fair perception?
It's a challenge. I would definitely, and having sort of gone through the districts as, you know, a parent and a teacher, I mean, like, and now in this position, so like last year at secondary, I think I had to find like 10 teachers. And this year it's less. And I recently did a survey just with our Midland high school teachers for those that were co-teaching, and all of them were like, yeah, we want to stay in those co-teaching partnerships. And observing a couple, we've got 2 or 3, no, because we have had a lot of turnover and it definitely impacts. So when I've observed and just sat in a class where we've got a 2-3 year partnership working, it's lovely. You can't tell which is which teacher. They are, I mean, it's just like, they just like meld into one, and you can't tell which kids are which, and it's fabulous. But yes, we need to keep our teachers longer in order for that to work really well. Does that help with that kind of answer it?
Because my follow-up, I was talking with the program coordinator this afternoon and lamenting that I'll contend, and I have one fellow educator, 3 years before you're comfortable teaching. I would say is about
Right.
standard,
Right.
and then special ed teaching has its own little tweaks to it. And so then when the recommendation is training, I just tense up thinking, how do we make it stick? Because of the turnover and the need to just really be thoughtful moving into, if you're trying to provide training to a PIP, or an intern, it's like they've got so much on their mind and so much higher pressing needs than learning UDL. They're trying to survive from day to day. So just that's not a question. That's just a statement that it's always a concern for me when the answer is training, because then how do we keep the trained people?
Any other comments? Well, with that, Dr. O'Brien, Dr. Jimenez, Kristen, Kimberly, Sarah, Kate, thank you so much for all of the work in this presentation and review of the service delivery. If there aren't any other business that we need to take care of, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn. No.
I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion, we've got a second. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? Great.
Thank you, Kate.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you,
Thank
Kate.
you all. Take care.
Yeah.